are. Yes, we're ready.
All right, good evening. I would like to call to order this regular meeting of the Encinitas City Council for Wednesday, November 15th, 2023 at 6:01 p.m. If the clerk would please call the roll.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Blackwell.
Here.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Here.
Councilmember Hinsey.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Here.
And Mayor Krantz.
Here.
Record will show that all members of the City Council are present this evening.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And if you'd all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I will be next issuing a couple of proclamations, so I'll head over that way. So the first proclamation is one to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the Ecke Ranch and the Ecke family here in Encinitas. And so tonight, although the agenda says the proclamation will be issued to Paul Ecke III, she is not Paul Ecke III. This is Lisbeth Ecke. And I've put together some pictures here. This is Paul Ecke Sr. and his wife, Magdalena, on the stoop of their home, which had to be rehabilitated for it to be livable, and it took a little bit of time, and you'll learn more when we read the proclamation. But this proclamation is about celebrating the effort that went into joining this community and becoming such an important part of it. So I'm going to flip through these pictures, and I'm going to ask Liz to tell us a little bit about the pictures as we go along.
I don't know exactly where this picture was taken, but it was my grandfather, Paul Ecke Sr., having a serious conversation, obviously. This is farm workers when everything was still being grown outside versus in the greenhouses.
There's a Scott there, Scott Valley, is that correct?
Is there?
Second from the right.
Oh, okay.
Call his first name.
A Scott from,
Scott Valley.
okay.
And your grandfather's third.
My grandfather's the one in the plaid shirt. Originally, we grew everything from bare root rose type plants. Just like if you got a bare root rose, you'd get a stalk plant and you'd plant it, and then it would bloom out at Christmas time. And this is what they looked like when we would ship them out in January and February across the country. These are the boxes that those bare root poinsettias were put in, and that is what got shipped on the railroad. And I think the next is, here they are going on the railroad at the Encinitas train station, which is now Panikin, but it used to be right down there. This is picking poinsettias for sale in the fields, because poinsettias for a very long time were just really cut flowers. They weren't really potted plants. And here they are. They would take them into the barn, and they would have to boil the ends, flash boil the ends, so that the sap that comes out of poinsettias when you cut them didn't stop. If you didn't do that, then they would just die because they couldn't take up any water. So all those tin cans, they would flash heat them so that they would cauterize the sap. Oh, did we? Okay, this was Encinitas back in, I don't know do you know what year this photo was from? I'm guessing that this road down here was Saxony Road, and that's the front field now where Coastal Roots Farm is, where you can see that trench coming down. this was a picture of my grandparents and then my parents and my brother and sister and I that was taken for Reader's Digest in 1964. Many of you probably know Edgar Engert. He's the man standing up. My grandfather is the one on the back of the electric cart. This is filling up a truck with blooming plants off to probably the Los Angeles Flower Market or something. Oh, here would have been in the 70s, myself, my mother, and my sister Sarah, that graduated from high school with Tony. And the three Pauls, my brother, my grandfather, and my father. That got confusing, so they all had to have different names so that they didn't all answer at the same time. And then here's Paul with some of the unusual colors and shapes of poinsettias. And this was a field that they planted every year on Saxony Road, except for 1 year. After 1966, it had been planted every year for 30 years, and they didn't plant it 1 year because they didn't grow them outside anymore. And everybody, we didn't realize how many people came to have their pictures taken in front of that field, and so people just started driving through the ranch trying to figure out where the field was. It was kind of chaos. So from then on, they planted it even though they didn't need it. And then Tony can.
And this is an example of a family that was looking for the field. I'm in the front, my sister Rose, my brother Fred, and my little sister Katie. This is about 1965 or 66. Yes. And it was, if you lived in the community, it was just the thing to do, get over there and get your picture taken when these plants were in bloom. So I'm going to read the proclamation now. We'll leave that picture up for a time. And whereas Paul Ecke Sr. took over the family floriculture business in Eagle Rock, a neighborhood in northeast Los Angeles, in 1919, after the death of his father, Albert Ecke. And whereas Paul Ecke Sr. bought 40 acres of land in Encinitas at $150 an acre in 1923, when there were approximately 600 residents living in the area. Whereas Paul Ecke Sr. and Magdalena Maurer eloped on New Year's Eve in 1924. Magdalena's family had immigrated to the U.S. from Switzerland when she was 2, and she had known Paul since she was 12 years old. And whereas the lot of land that Paul had bought in Encinitas included an old house and barn in disrepair, Paul and Magdalena commuted from Hollywood every weekend until they had transformed the house into their home. Whereas in 1935, Paul Ecke Sr. hired architect Lillian Rice to design a new ranch house on their growing poinsettia business land. And whereas together they established a 945-acre farm in Encinitas, California, along with a 450-acre farm in Carlsbad, California. And whereas their first child, Paul Ecke Jr., was born in 1925 and married Elizabeth Jinks Ecke, they had 3 children, Paul III, Elizabeth, and Sarah. And whereas Paul Ecke Jr. aggressively marketed the business and established strong public relations efforts, including magazine and newspaper articles, poinsettias shipped to the White House for televised Christmas specials, poinsettias provided to Southern California news programs, the Johnny Carson Show, Jay Leno Show, Today's Show, the Poinsettia Bowl college football sponsorship, television documentaries, and made the poinsettia the top-selling Christmas plant. And whereas Paul Ecke III, who bought the business in 1992, led Paul Ecke Ranch expansion into selling vegetative cuttings of spring plants and plant licensing through the PLA Company of Denmark. And whereas the Ecke family name and their contributions to the community are prominent at various locales throughout Encinitas, including the Magdalena Ecke YMCA, Magdalena Ecke Park, Paul Ecke Central Elementary School, and the Ecke family building at the San Diego Botanic Gardens. Now therefore I, Tony Kranz, Mayor of the City of Encinitas, along with all City Council members, do hereby recognize the 4 generations of the Ecke family for 100 years of history in the City of Encinitas, dated this 15th day of November, 2023. Matt Daly is Liz's cousin. He also is the son of one of Paul Sr. and Magdalena's daughters. Yes, so great work. Appreciate all that the Eckies have done philanthropically in our community. The YMCA is named after her grandmother. There are other parks and other facilities that have the Eckie name, Paul Eckie Central School. They have done a lot. They continue to do a lot today. Liz works with the YMCA, is on the board, raises a lot of money for the YMCA. Paul III is very active with Scripps Hospital Foundation. The philanthropic efforts continue, and I appreciate that a lot. Okay, the next proclamation is being presented to this year's Grand Marshal of our parade, Carolyn Cope. And I don't know if that picture's still up there, but Carolyn actually met us when we were this age. We lived just a half a block from one another, and
Freddie, Rosie, Tony, Katie, Trudy, Peggy, and Jimmy.
yeah. And it was certainly not easy to manage all 7 of us kids when my parents decided they want to go out and have some quiet time. Yes.
I have to say something about the Eckies, Liz. I knew your grandpa because he would come to our store, Roy's Market in Leucadia, because when he was trying to break into France, my dad was French Canadian, he'd help translate, and every Christmas he'd bring us the best gift, huge poinsettia that was it. That was our decoration in the house. So I love your family.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Now, back to the proclamation. It was important to me to make this presentation tonight, not only to mention the parade coming up on the 2nd. There's also a tree lighting ceremony on the 1st, Friday the 1st. She'll tell us a little bit more about that in a minute. But this is the first year I will not be able to be at the holiday parade. So I'll be at my cousin's wedding, which is going to be a joyous occasion, but I was not pleased to discover that we had that conflict. So I will now read the proclamation. Whereas it is with great honor and admiration that we recognize the outstanding contributions and lifelong dedication of Carolyn Roy Cope to the vibrant community of Encinitas. And whereas Carolyn Cope's unwavering commitment to Encinitas is exemplified by her deep roots, having spent most of her life in this coastal town, witnessing its growth and transformation. And whereas Carolyn's early years were marked by hard work and community spirit as she actively participated in her family's grocery store, Roy's Market in Leucadia, from a young age. And whereas despite a temporary absence due to her husband's medical school and Navy obligations in Japan, Carolyn's heart remained tethered to Encinitas, reinforcing her love for her hometown. And whereas upon her return in 1988, Carolyn Cope seamlessly integrated herself into the fabric of Encinitas, becoming an integral part of various community organizations, including the San Diego Heritage Museum, Encinitas Historical Society, Sister City Program, Cardiff Chamber, Holiday Parade Committee, Coastal Community Foundation, Arts Commission, Downtown Encinitas Main Street Association, and Rotary Club of Encinitas. And whereas Carolyn's devotion to the community extended to her active involvement in local schools, where she engaged in various activities, sports, and scouting endeavors, fostering a positive and enriching environment for the youth of Encinitas. And whereas Carolyn Cope has served as the president of the Encinitas Historical Society for the past 8 years, demonstrating exemplary leadership and dedication to preserving the rich history of our beloved town. And whereas Carolyn's commitment to fostering international connections is evident through her continued involvement with Amakusa, our Japanese sister city, where she has hosted numerous students and chaperones. And whereas for over 15 years, Carolyn has been the spirited voice of the holiday parade, sharing historical insights and enriching the community's experience during this beloved annual event. And whereas it is noteworthy to mention that Carolyn Cope, in addition to her many accomplishments, holds the unique distinction of having been Mayor Kranz's babysitter. a testament to the enduring bonds she has forged within the fabric of Encinitas. And I was inclined to mention the poopy diapers she changed, but I decided that was probably not in good taste. And whereas Carolyn Cope's multifaceted contributions and tireless efforts have solidified her as a living embodiment of an Encinitas tradition, enriching the lives of residents and leaving an indelible mark on the cultural tapestry of our community. Now, therefore, I, Tony Kranz, Mayor of the City of Encinitas, along with all the members of the City Council, deem it an honor and pleasure to recognize Carolyn Roy Cope for her exceptional contributions, tireless dedication, and unwavering commitment to the betterment of our community. Thank you.
I'm not done either. There's still a lot of work to do here, folks. I mean, we're just starting to kick in on the Pacific View property. Thank you to Mayor Kranz for that. But since I have the microphone, we are lighting the heritage tree this year. We're partnering this year for the first time with the City of Encinitas, who wholeheartedly jumped in to help get this event just up one more level. It's going to be fantastic. It's Friday night, the 1st of December, kicking off the holiday season. We have choruses from the Encinitas Union Elementary School District. We partnered with them. Santa comes on from Fire Station 1, the big hook and ladder. It's so much fun. It's just our wonderful, funky hometown event, followed by the best parade there is. And you won't be there.
No, not this year.
Oh, golly.
So
It's a cousin. That's not even a sister.
Yeah. The tree lighting is at Moonlight Beach.
Yeah, Moonlight Beach, upper parking lot. It's free. It's fun. And kids sing, and you can't beat little kids' choruses. They just love it. So, Anyway, thank you.
Yep. Thank you all very much. With that, we will move into oral communications.
Just a reminder, oral communications are to speak on items that are not listed on the agenda. You'll be limited to 3 minutes. I'll call you 3 at a time. The first 3 speakers, Raul Villamar, Ellen Burr, and then Natalie Satoon.
My name is Raul Villamar. I'm barber downtown Encinitas. I'm still waiting for the agenda. I'm still waiting and waiting and waiting. It's getting closer and closer and closer every single day to the agenda, and we're not going to have any time. You guys are supposed to have it done before the January 1st, and it's getting too close. My family's been here. My grandson is coming in December 22nd. He's been here. He's going to be the 5th generation. So we've been here since a long time. My father-in-law was driving around in downtown Carlsbad when it was dirt roads. We've been here for a long time. My barbershops have been here since 1980. My dad put it here. He used to be on base from the 60s, working Camp Pendleton barber. In the 1970s, he bought himself a barbershop downtown, one of the largest barbershops downtown. We've been for a while, and he was a Mexican Taxpayer Association president of North County. So we were very well known. Right now, it's getting worse and worse downtown. The next couple years, it's going to be the La Nina. La Nina is going to be raining, as you saw today. This is going to be the whole time. I went downtown right now. I should have taken more pictures, but there's nobody out there. What's going to happen the next couple months, the next couple years? We're still waiting for the agenda. I've had people call me and tell me that they wanted to come up here, but you folks aren't going to listen to them. They've been here 57 years, 47 years. We've been here 43 years. The other people have been 19 in the same little mall that we have here. Now, if you guys aren't going to take the parking away, let us know so we can just give this up and just let you guys do whatever you want. This morning, this afternoon, I had one of the people from the Legion, Foreign Legion, come up to me, and we were talking, and he said that he wanted to put just a little booth outside during the street fair, but you folks are going to charge him $400. The Foreign Legion, who's been here for a very long time, they're nonprofit, and you folks want to. But downtown Encinitas, all the restaurants, they're getting their stuff for free. When is that going to come up? When is it going to? When are you guys going to, folks, start charging them so we can get back to our lives? And I guess that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the city doesn't have any involvement in the booths for street fair. We issue a license to the 101 Main Street Association downtown, and they decide on the booths. So just might want to tell your friend that.
What do you mean that you folks don't give out permits? Who gives the permits downtown?
We gave the major event permit to the 101 Main Street Association, but we're not involved in who does the booths. So
It's not a booth, it's just a table outside.
we're not involved in that at all.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Next speaker is Ellen Burr, followed by Natalie Satoon, and then Scott Campbell.
Good evening, council. First, don't start the clock yet. I just wanted to let you know that if you go to the water district, you want to pay your bill or something, your photos are not all there, they're ancient. So I want to get those changed, so if somebody doesn't go in and see that
Yeah.
whoever's supposed to be in there, they can't call. L7, I do not understand why that agenda item, I don't even know why it was an agenda item, but I don't understand why it did not reach the level of being requiring a public hearing, since it had to do with a legislative action and disposing of property, which is what you did. I mean, you can't be half pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. It's either land you don't need anymore or land that you do. And I understand that there must have been a letter from HCD, but if that didn't come from their accountability unit and wasn't signed off by somebody who's a member of the California Bar, or at least didn't go through OGC, it wasn't worth the paper it's printed on. Furthermore, I would like to know where I can find a list of who all is receiving the SLA availability list. That's enough on L7. The RENA requirements, the Climate Action Plan, affordability housing. Encinitas is like the only city where the housing units is one-to-one with jobs. So we should be having the least burden of housing. But that is why I think that, like other people have recommended, you need to get together with other cities, because RENA does not jive with climate action, doing away with greenhouse gases, or anything that is logical and realistic. And finally, regarding the RENA, affordable housing with ADUs, there's only been like 120 approved in the past 2 years. And I would like to know how many of those have been classified as affordable. Finally, I believe it was Joy who mentioned that we're running out of, we're losing affordable housing. I know that for a fact. People have come in, bought units that were affordable because the people living in them would have qualified as affordable. But now those houses have been upgraded and are for short-term rentals. And we've had a lot of short-term rentals approved. I don't know how you do it, but I do know that investors, corporate investors in Florida have already started to short-term list properties that they have invested in by the hundreds, and I would hope that we would be making sure that doesn't happen
Thank you.
here. Thank you.
Hi, Natalie Statoon Cardiff. So I've spoken a couple of times on how the meeting has been working, and especially in the last couple of months with some of the banter that comes in return to speakers, and my impression that a lot of this is to quash great discussion. And we were privy to last week's disturbance, I would call it, when council members were trying to discuss their opinions and vote on something that was really important. And this has actually happened. I've been sitting in here twice, and I've seen Councilman Ehlers shut down on something that's really important to vote on. First, it was the pipe, and then it was SLA. So I have something actually for you, Tony, as chair of our council. So I have a copy of Robert's Rules. I've scanned through and I've pinpointed a copy. So the fundamentals of Robert's Rules, you can brush up on those and be polished.
I already have a book, but you can give it
Okay,
to any
I'm
of
gonna-
my colleagues.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave it for Kathy. This is, I've made some
I
notes
have
for
a
you.
copy of that book. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave it with Kathy for you. Hope you enjoy it.
Next speaker is Scott Campbell, followed by Karen Schrader.
All these short speakers here. Okay, so I've heard this word quite a lot out of the mouths of, I think, all of you. Small town. Encinitas is a small town. Do we want to be a small town? If we want to be a small town, we shut up. We don't try to lead anything, and we stay quiet. That's what small towns do. We try to be low profile. We don't try to be the best persons. I'm here to ask that the council add estimates and maintenance costs to projects. I mentioned this before, and we're going to talk about this more. Unintended consequences of the previous council's beautification projects. We're talking about street bike ramps and dining, street dining too. Last weekend, I had the pleasure to attend the a street cleanup in Leucadia. Mayor Krantz is there. He worked for an hour. And we filled up half a dumpster with garbage. Half a dumpster. That's this high. It's huge. I knew I wasn't going to be picking up litter. I dug deep into my toolbox, and I brought my own tools. I brought a broom, a scooper, and a blower, and a trash can. And I personally picked up between 75 and 100 pounds of dirt off of the gutters and these bike racks, just in one block, just between Coffee and Lit Papagayo. I was picking up last winter's dirt. It's still there. It's already started raining. I can't wait to see how much my efforts have been ruined in just 1 week. Yes, Leucadia is funky, but it's a bit less junky. After the thing, we had to do a little sign out, and people wrote down what their treasures were. I took a little note of what the popular items were. Guess what the number one item was? Doggy doo was the number one item that people found. And the number two item was human doo. And number three was cigarette butts. I mean, it's ridiculous. And after the thing, there was a raffle. I won this cool Scott's automotive. Everybody has Kinos. I mean, people in Chicago have Kinos. Nobody has Scott's. And I was talking to a friend of mine from Carlsbad and his friend from Huntington Beach. And guess what they talked about? They talked about the condition of our roads. They talked about what's with all the signs. I counted 78 signs that say, do not leave valuables in your car between La Costa and Leucadia. I mean, that's insulting. Does the council think people are stupid? I mean, we need a sign every 20 yards saying, don't leave your stuff in your car. Now, back to that cleanup. It was in one block. There was 2 bike racks, 2 street dining sets, and 3 handicap ramps. These handicap ramps were blocked. If I was a handicapped person in a wheelchair, you guys would be in big trouble. I mean, there was construction debris in these things. This is what's going on in our city. I asked for 10 seconds extra. On the way here, I stopped right to check some drainage. That man that's here a month ago is flooding. Scott's Automotive is flooding. This is after 2 hours of rain. Thank you for your time.
Karen Schrader?
Karen Schrader. Town Council members. It was rather informative to watch last week's session. I saw the scenario of good guy, bad guy, bad guy, play out with regards to the L7 low-income housing development. I learned that the bait and switch is alive and well. I saw that L7 was added to the agenda last minute and that it was only to be discussed. In the end, it ended up being discussed and voted on. This time, Kelly was the bad cop and Tony played the good cop, and getting the results they intended anyway. L7 was earmarked for a park, and it was discussed for low-income home developments, but was taken off the table because they opted for the other two developments on Quail Garden. Now those projects were pushed through. This town council is going after L7's park and make it a low-income site even before the other low-income development has broken ground. Does this make any sense? Kelly, you said you worked on L7 project all summer. I believe if you worked as hard on getting us out of overdevelopment in Encinitas, we would be very, very proud of you. I have watched Tony and Joy and Kelly for the last 2 terms with Blakespeare, and you have voted yes on every development you put on the docket. I don't think you ever said no every time I watched. Enough is enough. I came here tonight to say no. I want it on record that I am saying no, that we are saying no. Development is great, but not overdevelopment. Let's name this park the Quail Eckie Park. The Quail Eckie Park, they were here today. They gave us a ton of land. They made that thing. Tony, your family, it's here. It's your family. You are all from here. You don't want to overpopulate. The roads are getting crowded. They're going to explode. And we know you're doing the best you can up there, but we need to do better. We need to do better. Thank you.
That does conclude public comment.
Okay, thank you all for the comments. We did not have a closed session today, so there is no report. And could the clerk announce
Yes,
the changes to the agenda?
yes, for changes to the agenda, we are moving item 10B before consent calendar. It will be heard next out of order.
Okay, 10B.
Good evening, Mayor Kranz, Deputy Mayor Lyons, council members, and members of the public. My name is Matthew Edgeworth, traffic engineer with the engineering department. I will be presenting item 10B, safety and mobility improvements in the vicinity of housing element site study. With me tonight, to my right, is David Mizell with Rick Engineering. He is part of the consultant team with the study. To his right, we have Abe Bandigan, city traffic engineer. And then lastly, we have Jill Bankston, city engineer and director of engineering. So a brief background on the city's housing element update. As part of the 6-cycle housing element update, multiple sites throughout the city were rezoned for multifamily housing to accommodate the future growth of the city. 15 sites located citywide were identified and approved with the housing element update and are shown on this map on the left side of this slide. These sites are at various stages of the planning and approval process, ranging from pending application to a couple sites being in construction currently. On October 19th, 2022, a city council initiated item was brought forward, which provided direction to staff to advance mobility and traffic calming improvements near the housing element sites, including engaging with a consultant for this process. On February 15th, 2023 of this year, City Council approved the scope and provided funding to conduct a study to analyze potential improvements. At the same meeting, City Council provided direction to staff to return with a preliminary prioritization of projects. From there, the City Council was to select the top 5 projects to move forward with the next phase of the study, which is where we are tonight. The preparation of the 30% design plans and cost estimates are included in the consultant's scope and fee that was approved back in February. So what has been completed thus far as part of the study? The consultant was tasked with reviewing all traffic impact studies developed for the housing element sites, which analyze level of service on roadways and intersections. They were also tasked with reviewing projects found in the city's approved planning documents, including the city's active transportation plan, the ATP, the local roadway safety plan, also known as the LRSP, as well as the MAP, also referred to as the Modal Alternatives Project. In addition, the consultant was tasked to evaluate and perform field visits in the area surrounding each of the housing element sites on their own, as well as with staff to identify potential improvements. From this comprehensive review, a list of potential safety and mobility projects was developed. These projects include active transportation projects, traffic calming projects, traffic congestion relief or decreasing traffic delay, and also addressing gaps in the city's existing infrastructure. For the purpose of receiving public feedback, the city was divided into 3 separate zones. Zone 1 focused on streets and corridors within the community of Leucadia. Zone 2 focused on Old Encinitas. And then lastly, Zone 3 included the communities of Cardiff, New Encinitas, and Hain. Staff and the consultant held 3 community meetings in the month of August for each of the zones. In addition, electronic feedback forms were also made available on the city's website for the public to provide input. The public comment period lasted through early October 2023, and staff and the consultant received over 150 residents providing feedback as part of the study within that period. An example comment card is shown here listing the questions that were asked to the community. The comment card can also be found in attachment 1 of the staff report, along with the responses received from residents for each of the 3 zones. Questions centered around the future growth of the city, as well as seeking input on the proposed projects, can be found within these questions. One of the questions that was asked on the comment card to the community was what the public's top infrastructure concerns were with the future growth of the city. So on this slide, we have it broken down by the 3 different zones. So Zone 1, Leucadia, we can see here that the top response was the lack of pedestrian facilities. The top responses for Zone 2, Old Encinitas, were mixed between lack of pedestrian facilities, pedestrian and bike safety, traffic congestion, and traffic calming. And then lastly, for Zone 3, which includes Cardiff, New Encinitas, and Hain, we can see here that traffic congestion and also lack of pedestrian facilities were the top responses received for Zone 3. An additional question that was asked to the community was which streets and corridors require infrastructure improvements with the future growth of the city. For Zone 1, North Vulcan and La Costa Avenue were the prevalent responses. The responses for Zone 2 were spread amongst El Camino Real, the Encinitas Boulevard, Quail Gardens intersection, Saxony Road, followed by Quail Gardens Drive. And then lastly, for Zone 3, Rancho Santa Fe Road, El Camino Real, South El Camino Real, and Manchester were among the top responses received. The community was also asked what factors should be used to prioritize projects. This was an important question asked because it helped with the creation of the ranking criteria, which I will go over shortly in the next few slides. On this slide, we can see the breakdown of responses received between Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3. The responses involve lack of existing infrastructure, safety, significance of impact, community input, and whether the proposed project was near a school or park. A total of 79 projects are listed in attachment 2, the project ranking list and criteria of the staff report. Projects are grouped into 2 separate categories. First one being new projects that were added based on community input, and then the projects that staff and the consultant presented to the community for feedback. 33 of the projects were brought forward by the community to add to the study, whereas 46 potential projects were presented from staff and the consultant to the community to make that 79 total projects. Ranking criteria specific to the projects was developed with the help of responses received from the public, as mentioned on the previous slide. It was also a collaborative effort between the consultant and staff to finalize the scoring and ranking criteria. Projects were scored for each criterion based on a weighted ranking, low, medium, or high, or a yes or no designation. And then on this side, we can see the different ranking categories in the blue boxes. So with attachment 2 of the staff report, it includes this ranking criteria shown here. It's 4 pages in length. In addition to what you see on this slide, attachment 2 of the staff report also has a ranking key. This ranking key provides details on the point allocation for each of these categories. To aid in providing preliminary prioritization, tiered project lists were created, or project groupings essentially were developed. Tier 1 projects are those that receive the most points out of all ranked projects, or the upper 1/3 of all ranked projects. Tier 2 projects are in the middle, or the 1/3 of projects that were ranked. And then lastly, Tier 3 projects receive the least number of points using the ranking criteria, or the lower 1/3 of all projects that are included in this study. On the next couple slides, we have those tiered project groupings that I just discussed. So Tier 1 projects, these are the projects that receive the most points using the ranking criteria. On the right-hand side, we have the column as well, just pointing out which zone these projects fall within. So again, Tier 2 projects, and then lastly, Tier 3 projects. And then also included in attachment 3 of the staff report, there is a table listing out non-engineering and ongoing projects. These were pulled from the study and were not ranked because they were either non-engineering or they are currently in process. The recommended action before the City Council tonight is to provide direction on the selection of 5 projects to move forward with the study for the preparation of 30% design plans and cost estimates. Staff anticipates returning to the City Council approximately spring of next year with the final report for the study, which will include the 30% design plans and cost estimates for these 5 projects. Staff and the consultant are available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there still two speakers. So do we have any preliminary questions before we go to public speakers? Okay, public speakers, please.
Our two speakers, Dennis Caden and then Kathleen Lees. Oh, did he have something to hand out?
Greetings, Mayor, Council. I did not come here tonight to speak about this, but I couldn't resist. I attended the first meeting for the first district, and I don't even know how I heard about it, but it was very poorly attended meeting. There were about 15 people there. And I was the only person who lived in the district of the project that most impacts where I live. I was the only person there. There was no one from the project that's over on Clark Street, but there was one person like me who spoke up about it and said, that's a huge impact on the neighborhood, and there's no one here to even speak up for it. So it's my impression that all of this information, 150 feedbacks, you can get that much from a CPP meeting. This is, whatever numbers they're coming up with I can't see how it could possibly be a fair representation of what's going on in the community. It became a popularity contest. Who heard about it, who knows about it, and who got to have the most votes. And that's not how we should be spending our money. The funds should go where the most people are being impacted by this, because I don't know about all of the projects, but the projects I do know who are in Leucadia are every single one of them except, and I don't know if you even consider Fox Point one of the projects, but they all are impacting traffic and the safety of the community. And the one on Piraeus is especially impacting. Those people are going to be sitting in a little square, a dug-in hole, and they can't get anywhere except by car. There isn't a safe sidewalk, there isn't a safe pathway, they can't ride their bike, it's on a busy street. It's just a nightmare. And the one over on Vulcan is also creating a huge amount of traffic into a neighborhood that was never anticipating it. And La Costa is getting even more traffic. So I recommend that you look, where are the most people being impacted? Where are the most seriously dangerous safety issues? And that's where we should be looking at spending our money. I mean, some of the issues that we saw on that were being considered, one of them was was for a bike path on a street that didn't even have a sidewalk. And it was like a bike path, and they said, well, in the future, when they might want to have a bike path there. That's, with the serious issues we have going on, that is not the kind of issue we should be looking at. Find the most serious issues that are creating the most serious mobility problems and safety issues, and the most people that are impacted. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dennis Caden, proud member of Encinitas Community Collective and a resident of Encinitas for at least 35 minutes. I agree with Kathleen. My first slide is that based on impact to the communities, my personal opinion is the selection process is a no-brainer. The difficulties that are going to be caused on Vulcan and La Costa are overwhelming, and I would suggest you prioritize every effort to make the entire length of Vulcan from Leucadia to La Costa a much better place and safer to live. Prioritize Quill Gardens Drive and widening at Encinitas Boulevard. Why projects are approved without having the road widened with all the traffic that's going to be there puzzles me, so please improve that. And please, I don't think anything was mentioned about Clark. And that neighborhood is impacted just by its own narrow streets. Now with the apartments there, that's going to be another disaster waiting to happen for congestion. And of course, please keep Plato and Piraeus prioritized and funded for improvements, though right now I believe it's in a legal issue, so it might be on hold, but keep the money for us. Examples would be slide 2. please. Widening of Plato to prevent backups. The little red, if you guys have this, widening it so that people can make a right-hand turn to go north on Piraeus, while traffic trying to go left will be impacted by increased traffic. That needs to be widened. At the next one, please. Right there is improving one separate right-hand turn lane at La Costa. You don't even need Piraeus Point to have that done. That needs to be done. The next slide. A real good fix would be to widen it for a right-hand turn lane and 2 left-hand lanes, because not enough cars can get out on La Costa fast enough. We're probably getting like 4 to 5 cars, especially if people are coming out of the park and ride. The sequence is not correct. Next slide, please. Piraeus itself is designated as a suburban collector, and this is what it looks like. It's supposed to be 50 feet wide with bike lanes in both directions and pedestrian walkways on each side of the street going both north and south. That's a great idea, but we need to keep the right-of-way so that you're able to do that in the future. The center lane would be an ideal left-hand turn lane for people coming home at night, getting off the I-freeway and going south on Piraeus to get up to Plato or to get into the Piraeus Point. Don't forget our trail system. And next one is the trails in Encinitas. This goes from Leucadia to La Costa.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your time.
That does conclude public speakers.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed, and it maybe speaks to some of the comments that were made about the process that we went through on the gathering of information, the Tier 2, so one of the drivers of this whole thing is the fact that these housing element sites are going to create an impact on the existing neighborhoods that the developments are going into, and it was a particularly keen issue when it came to the Clark Avenue project because of the fact that Union basically has no pedestrian infrastructure, and Saxony is missing a whole lot of the sidewalks are missing. So when I see that the sidewalks end up as 2F on Tier 2 projects, that to me is a bad sign. And we've got 2F and 2I is Union Street DG pedestrian path. So here we have a fairly significant, fairly impactful housing development project at Union and the freeway, and the 2 most important improvements for mobility are in the second tier. So that's a sign to me that somewhere this thing didn't accomplish what I'd hoped it would do. Now, I'm not asking for you to cook the books or go against what people want, but the people who live in those apartments don't exist yet, right? So that makes it hard for them to come advocate for these improvements. Just my first initial thoughts. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Thank you, Mayor Kranz. So I was glad to get the staff report on this and the consultant's input. I was particularly wanting to understand how many comments we received through the various ways we reached out to the community. We had the open houses or the public presentations for each of the zones. So we had 3 of those. We had the newsletter. We had the website. We had, there's another, the survey, the survey. And across all those ways of getting input, we had 150 people give their thoughts. So I was actually pleased to hear that, because I think that for us is a really good turnout for our outreach for our projects. So I'm pleased that we did get that much input. Tonight is also an opportunity for public input. So I know we've had a few speakers. I know there's some people here in the audience who are choosing not to speak but have some strong opinions. So I just wanted to reinforce the statement that our staff made, that even I questioned at first, if there's only this many people at the public meeting on one of three, then how does that be relevant to what the outcome of this process is? But it was more than that. It was 150 people. So I was happy to hear that. And the other thing I want to say is I was also happy to hear that in our prioritization, we prioritize safety really at the top of what's important. And I did see in Zone 3, which covers my district, that was actually ranked as the top. There were 21% of people who said that was their top concern, is safety. So we've had a lot of talk lately here at City Council about the speed of our streets. And we're taking some action to reduce those speeds because we have demonstrated that we are in a position where we have some control over that. We have some tools at our disposal that maybe we haven't had in the past. So we really want to capture those and look to reduce the speeds on our streets because we tie directly speed to safety. And I think we've demonstrated that we agree about that. So when I see El Camino Real come up so high on all these, on the tiers as not just one location, but several locations along El Camino Real, I think that what we've got there is a problem of speed, but also of clarity of who's where and who has the hierarchy where on the roadway. And I am terribly concerned about our future safety of pedestrians, bikes, and cars on El Camino Real. Now, I hope we're able to reduce the speed limit along El Camino Real. We will work really hard to do that. But I think that projects along El Camino Real ranked quite high, and it might be due to the fact that there's a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit on El Camino Real. So in a way, I'm happy to see that came out this way because I've known that for a long time, and I've been really concerned. And my constituents have, all the way from Miracosta College to the Grower School to the ICA Museum to Pacific Pines residents to Sage Canyon residents, have said that we have problems here with safety and how we regulate, how we provide medians, how we do turning on this 55-mile-an-hour roadway. I wanted to give that background because this is really my jurisdiction, and I hear from people about the concerns in this area of town. So Sage Canyon is a new community coming in next to an old community, also called Sage Canyon, I believe. I'm going to look. Yes. And sorry about that. So the new community doesn't live there, yes, and so they're not voting yet. But the existing community in this area has lived there for years, and they understand what the concerns are at these new intersections. And there will be a new housing element, and it was just approved by Planning Commission, called Sage Canyon, right there across the street from the Grower School and across the street from ICA Museum, at where we've got 55 miles an hour. And so there is an item here that's identified as traffic signal and median improvements at Sage Canyon Drive, El Camino Real intersection. And in my view, that's the least we can do to improve the safety, and I think it's our obligation to do that. Thank you.
Councilmember Hensy.
Thank you. I want to thank the mayor first for reordering the agenda. It was my request to hear this item because I'm going to try to get home after this item. I'm really under the weather, and I have a little one who's under the weather too. So this was a really important conversation for me to take part of, especially because each of our districts have a lot of really important projects to cover. And I think we've been wanting to see the results of this for a little while. So I do have some projects in mind I'd like to see. But before I share those projects, I have some questions about, this really was sort of a mind bender, reading all the prioritization and trying to figure out, like with the money that we're working with, what's the reality that the projects we select are actually going to be constructed. So I know that there are times when, Abe, you design our projects in-house, and then we don't pay extra to do that. So can you just help me understand, like, what's the threshold for these projects? When is one of these projects one that you could design in-house, and what's an example of one that we might want to push forward tonight because we have the consultants who could do the designs for us, and we might not have that expertise in-house?
Thank you, Councilmember. At a time when this study was initiated by council, there was no set-aside budget for construction. It was a council member initiative. I think Mayor Kranz initiated this item. We had the funding to hire a consultant and study this. At the time, the idea was, because of all these developments happening, we want to identify potential opportunities for improvement in the vicinity of these projects. But the design of those projects, depending on what project is selected tonight by council, can be done in-house, or we have to hire somebody. There's absolutely no money for construction at the moment. So when we come back in March, April, we'll bring a 30% design. We can provide some sort of a cost estimate at that point, a better cost estimate. Obviously, depending on the size of the project that you choose tonight, it would be different. But how it's going to be funded, there were talks, I don't know if the previous meeting, there were talks in the infrastructure task force, if it's going to be incorporated into that list, or if it's going to be a separate funding source that council wants to set aside for these. That's a whole different story.
Yes,
Future
and that's
conversation.
why it's a difficult decision for us to make, because I'm calculating in my mind, should I choose some projects that are under $100,000 and could be designed in-house, and then perhaps we can actually see them happen within the next budget cycle, or should we, put our chips all in one basket and say, let's do a temporary multi-use path on Vulcan, which was a clear winner, and often is a clear winner whenever we embark on such planning projects. I think if there's support for all of us to throw our chips in one basket, my hope would be that we can do a little design for a temporary multi-use path on Vulcan, North Vulcan, because that is a clear winner here, and I think that we do pick up so many community benefits with a project like that. If we're going to instead focus on projects that might be accomplished within the next budget, then I would take a different route. And my first choice project would be the sidewalk infill on the west side of Quail Gardens Drive. And I noticed too that one had it's currently considered low benefit for surrounding neighbors, but I think once the housing element sites are constructed there, that goes way up to high. The second project that I identified that could be accomplished sooner than later was one that had 26% of the concern from District 2 respondents, and that's the intersection at Encinitas Boulevard between Quail Gardens Drive and Westlake. The suggestion that was included in this recommendation is project number 56, and it's bike boxes. But I recently was reviewing the Santa Fe corridor plans, and I saw that we have protected intersections along that corridor, which are a little bit different, and I think that this intersection might need that treatment. I'm still learning about bike boxes, but I think that if we had had some visuals of the differences, I think folks would have voted for the protected intersections there. And then the number 3 project I'd like to put some support behind actually isn't in my district, but it's one that we hear about often. And I keep saying we need to tee this one up for grant funding, and that's the Manchester Ave bike and pet improvements. And every time I drive that way, it's really disappointing to see Maricosta students having to walk along the skinniest little goat trail between the 55-mile-per-hour road, where cars we know are going much higher than that, and the lagoon. And we've got all this beautiful infrastructure under the freeway now, and we're just missing that link. So a protected bike path, and I know there were like several different projects that could end up being that protected bike path and the pedestrian improvements there. But if we can start designing that, then I think we'll be well positioned to receive grant funding for it. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. I'm not ready to say which projects I support because I first have a couple comments and questions. So one of my comments was when we just had the joint meeting with the Infrastructure Task Force and city staff earlier today, we did talk about that a lot of these projects, particularly hopefully all the tier 1, maybe most of, maybe the full list, goes into consideration of the long list of projects that were presented earlier. And I think there's still that look to see where there's the overlap today on those projects. So I would really, again, like to emphasize, I think that's an important step. The other was, Mayor Kranz pointed out some surprises. I think I had some surprises too. One example was just where the projects for Quail Gardens Drive and Saxony rated, a lot of them ended up in Tier 2. And so I think one of the slides that was shown earlier showed that the public input was 26% was for Quail Gardens Drive improvement, 26% for Saxony of the total 100%. And I think, the public is telling us something there. They fear what's coming. So now a couple quick questions. We were asked to weigh in on projects of going to that next step to get to 30% design, right? And I'm trying to understand, even looking at the Tier 1 projects, it seems like some of them may have already reached that level. Is that the case? Can I ask if you, at least with the Tier 1, are there any that have hit that threshold?
I don't believe so, council member. If it has started the design process, it would be listed under the table titled non-engineering and ongoing projects if it is funded and currently in design.
Yeah, maybe one or two, we're going over the list, maybe one or two, the quiet zone, it's going forward, intersection of Sheridan, La Costa,
Right.
that one. There are a few that we have had some progress on. But yeah, the majority of those do require some good engineering work before getting to that 30% level.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And then second quick question here is, there's a criterion about the estimated number of users to benefit. That was one of the rating criterion. My question is, was that a current state or a projected future state when looking at that criterion? Meaning, once these housing element developments happen, are you basing it on what will be or what is today?
It was based on projected users, what will happen, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And last question is, just to clarify for me and maybe some out there, on Tier 1, there's 2 projects on North Vulcan. One is the buffered Class 2 bike lanes and sidewalk, and one is the multi-use path. Can you just describe the difference between those so we're crystal clear?
Yeah, the North Vulcan buffered bike lanes and sidewalk is only about a 600-foot section of Vulcan immediately south of La Costa, and it's really filling the gap between where the multi-use path would terminate and then where it would transition to buffered bike lanes and sidewalk. Since it's grade separated at La Costa and Vulcan, it goes up the hill, so there needed to be some connection to La Costa, so that fills the gap.
Great, thank you for that.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, I'll start out with some observations of the data, some takeaways, and then I'll either yield or come back later with direct recommendations. I share Kathleen Lisa's concern with the number of samples that this data is based on. I personally attended the Zone 3, and an important thing to remember, Zone 3 is Alevinheim, New Encinitas, or the better part of New Encinitas, and Cardiff. That's over half of the population of the city. There were 7 people other than staff, myself, and Councilmember Lyons at that meeting. And in fact, I think 3 or 4 of you are here tonight in the audience. So it was a lot of the same people getting in multiple times. So I take this data with a grain of salt at this point. But that said, it still had some good takeaways. My first takeaway was put the money where the projects are in the neighborhoods with the housing element units. That is clearly Northwest Leucadia. That is the place that needs the most help because we have put You look at the map, that's why the map was split up that way. Most of it is in Old Encinitas up in northwest Leucadia. Number two on my takeaway is the La Casa and North Vulcan are obviously two very key impacted roads, as is Quail Gardens Drive. Second takeaway or third takeaway is put money where the infrastructure is missing, that it causes a big safety gap, or possibly near one of the developments or a park. And I look at the sidewalk gap on Quail Gardens Drive and go, look at all the projects going right in that neighborhood, and we have people walking in the streets. So I would put that one near high in the list. As I went down, I was really pleased to hear Councilmember Hinsey mention the North Vulcan, so I would support you there. The La Costa pedestrian path, I think the one that Mayor Kranz and I walked, and while we were walking, I think we saw at least two different sets of people, multiple people, walking in the bike lane and in the street. So clearly, with all the development going up in that region, we've got to get some sort of safety. Another takeaway is I would prioritize pedestrian over bicycles at this time because we have people walking out in the traffic lanes. Bicycles, at least for short segments, can get there, and I'm just saying we have gaps. And so speaking of gaps, Rancho Santa Fe Road, Trail 82, I think is one that is very, very important. And when I went down, and again, I'm going to pull up from the last meeting our current capital project list, and this shows which ones are designed, which ones are funded or partially funded, and which ones are under construction or funded for construction. And if I go down this list of what we've kept as a priority for the last year, we've got La Costa pedestrian path on there. We've got sidewalk infill on Quail Gardens Drive, and we've got Rancho Santa Fe Road. So I think those belong in the top 5. There are a couple others I'd probably throw in there. I like the idea of the traffic light at El Camino Real. I agree that is a crucial spot, and I think that coupled with, as Councilmember Lyons said, coupled with slowing the traffic along there, could be a huge needle mover to get the safety up. And I also think the Manchester, I'm not sure on both sides, but I think anything we can do to get easier traffic to pedestrian and bike traffic more safely to Miracosta is good. So that's my input for now.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the projects that have been mentioned. I have a little bit of concern about the notion of filling in the sidewalk gaps on the west side of Quail Gardens Drive because the east side is pretty much end-to-end sidewalk. And while it's nice to have both sides, I guess one question would be, how big of gaps are there on the west side? I know one of them, the sidewalk terminates at Quail Gardens, right? So the executive director of Quail Gardens has offered cooperation to put the sidewalk through the garden and then come back out on the other side of the garden. So it would be interesting to know what that might take to do. But at the same time, I am really a strong advocate for the improvements to Saxony Road that fills those gaps because of the Clark Avenue project and the fact that Saxony is not walkable with high degree of safety. So that's where I'm at. I listed, so it was a little bit frustrating to find myself looking at so many projects on Tier 2, but I'm going to just say it. And one question before I mention again. So you explained 1A, which is North Vulcan Avenue, buffered Class 2 bike lanes and sidewalk, which is where where 1D, North Vulcan Avenue multi-use path, that would facilitate the transition from the multi-use path to get to La Costa Avenue safely. Is that what that's for? 1A is a kind of a combined with 1D?
They're two separate projects, but they're interconnected, yes.
Pardon me? They're two separate projects, but they
But they would
work
be,
hand in hand.
yeah.
So if we do the 1D, North Vulcan Avenue multi-use path, the further north you get, the tighter it becomes, so that the multi-use path part is not really all that great. So we're gonna cross Andrew or something, and that's where the sidewalks would be completed, right? And we have sidewalks going in front of the apartment building. So,
Yeah, they'll be covering the sidewalk on their frontage.
and they're also, as a condition of approval, are putting in a sidewalk on the west side of Vulcan there too. So it would be nice to be able to somehow connect the whole thing on the west side, but, so 1A and 1D are of, I would make those two of the projects that I would pick. 1H would be another one. And then over to 2, I would go with 2C and 2F.
Can you say what they are?
So I would go with 2C, which is Saxony Road, Union Street intersection improvements. Option B, mini roundabout. 2F is Saxony Road sidewalk infill. And 2I is the Union Street DG pedestrian path. 1A is the North Vulcan Avenue buffered Class 2 bike lanes and sidewalk. 1D is the North Vulcan Avenue multi-use path. And I'm assuming when we talk about 1D, that's going from Encinitas Boulevard to as far north as possible. And we're going to make use of the railroad corridor. And so that would include, we've changed the parking north of Leucadia Boulevard. And south of Leucadia Boulevard, we've got a curb which, doesn't allow for parking in theory in the rail corridor. And so this particular project would then remove that curb and make it so that parallel parking was allowed in that stretch, or how do you see that working?
Yeah, I believe on most of the corridor, the existing area where people park at a 90-degree angle would be converted to parallel parking.
Well, and so south of Leucadia Boulevard, because there's a curb there, there is parking, but people are driving over the curb to get the parking done. So the question is, does this propose to remove the curb, pave so that the cars can park on pavement, and then we'd have the dirt path in the railroad corridor similar to north of Leucadia Boulevard?
Yeah. We were focused on north of Leucadia Boulevard for when we evaluated this section.
Yep.
We didn't really consider south of Leucadia at this time, but I know that ultimately that it would be extended down to Encinitas Boulevard.
Well, can we look at the 30% engineering for what it would take to do from Encinitas Boulevard to, the north end, La Costa, as part of this?
It could, yeah.
Yep. So those are my 5. I think I actually did 6, so. Councilmember, or Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Well, I think Mayor Kranz meant to also include traffic signal and median improvements at Sage Canyon and El Camino Real, because I know how he understands how important the safety along El Camino Real is. But I'd like to lean us back in that direction, because it's I don't want to veer too far from the tiering and the public comment that we got, and then move entirely in the direction of not addressing any improvements in half of the city, which is what is Zone 3. So in regards to Zone 3, I really want to still advocate for the Sage Canyon intersection of El Camino Real. I actually don't think, in the whole scheme of things, it's a hugely expensive improvement, but I think it's well warranted for safety. And we asked the community to tell us what they wanted as far as improvements and to prioritize what was most important. They identified this location. They identified that safety was the most important concern in Zone 3. And I don't want to disregard that, so I'm going to still promote that. And I do want to say, though, that we have way more need than we have available money, even though we don't know what available money we might have. This is just, we're saying we're going to commit to some stuff. We don't know what it's going to cost. But I understand that we do need to bring some projects forward that are in District 1. I absolutely, absolutely. And I'm in favor of that. And I'll defer to those who represent District 1 on that, but I would ask in exchange that we also bring up and bring in what the public has said that they think is important, which is this intersection of Sage Canyon and El Camino Real. Thank you.
Yeah, and I had a typo. I meant 1C when I said 1H, so yes, I'm supportive of that as well.
I thought you were.
I saw El Camino Real and jumped at that wrong letter, so yes.
Thank you.
And it's specifically because of the housing element project that's proposed, that's approved for there. Councilmember Blackwell.
Yeah, okay, so I'd like to put forward my recommendations as well. I totally understand the needs in District 1. We are getting a lot of housing element development. I would recommend, I wish that 1A and 1D were just one and the same project. So if I can squeeze those together, that would be one. But then, and 1A and 1D were along the North Vulcan corridor. I also agree with La Costa Avenue multimodal improvements, which is Project 1B. The 1C, which is the traffic signal and median improvements at Sage Canyon, El Camino Real. I am going to put in 1E for the at-grade pedestrian railroad crossings between Leucadia and La Costa. I know we're making some improvement there, but they are sorely needed. We're going to get a bunch of new residents, and they're all going to cross the tracks illegally. And then I also agree with the mayor's suggestion about the Saxony Road improvements. I know I'm adding to my list. I can't help it. But I think the 2C, 2F are really important. And I don't disagree with Councilmember Hinsey's request on the sidewalk infill for Quail Gardens Drive, especially when we have a partner who can help with that. And that's the Botanic Garden. So that's those are my recommendations. I probably am up to 10, right? But oh well, you know, I tried.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's any information. We had applied for a grant for La Costa Avenue. Has that been decided?
That one we were supposed to find out in December.
Okay, thank you. Because that is a very important project. Councilmember Hinsey.
Thank you. I think I am supportive of doing something on Union Street and Union and Saxony, but I'm curious to know, one, are we sure that the developer isn't doing these improvements, especially the Union Street DG trail? And then the second question is, do we own the right-of-way already to do the Union Street DG trail?
Thank you, Councilmember Hinsey. So the approved Clark Avenue Apartments project, they are conditioned to provide a DG path just along their frontage, so kind of where the cul-de-sac is along Union Street. And then in terms of the right-of-way, that would be something that we would have to look at in terms of how we can fit those improvements within the existing right-of-way, and what type of encroachments are currently in the city's right-of-way.
That would come out with the 30% drawings?
Correct.
Yep. So we have now a list. We have nobody else requesting to speak. I wonder if we could put a grid up or something. Can we make a list? I think I said 1C, 1D, and 2C, 2F, 2I, and 2R. And I don't know how many would prefer one of those go away and be replaced by something else, but.
Did you say 1A also?
1A.
I thought you had 1A and 1D together.
That was me.
I think he did too.
Yes, that was, you're right, 1A. I did not have 1B.
No, 1A and C.
1A and 1C, that's correct.
And 1D. Everything but B. No.
Correct. 1A, 1C, 1D, 2C, 2F, 2I, 2R. And that's more than we're supposed to be picking, but I would ask the indulgence of my colleagues to perhaps implore upon the city manager to find the resources to do 6 projects instead of 5. Yes, magic wand, yes.
And not 1B though, with the La Costa Avenue.
No, because
Okay.
let's see what happens
You're
here.
supportive of it.
I am,
Just
absolutely. I
think there may
agree.
be a different
It's-
funding.
It's
Okay.
high. It is high, yes.
But if we don't get the funding, then.
Then we're going to be back talking about it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I had 1A, 1D, 1B, but I'll go along with Mayor Krantz on that if we have another funding source. I have 1I and did I say 1C? And that's the El Camino Real Sage Canyon. And trying to think,
1I is fund construction of that.
and which one was the Saxony? 2C, 2F.
Yes, 2C, 2F.
Just
I'll move approval. Is that of that list?
I would second that.
So let's,
Or is this just direction? We don't even need a resolution?
no, I
That's
think
what
we
I was
do need to
looking
vote
at.
on this, but so the list comes up with 1A, 1C, 1D, 1I,
I was 1.
2C, 2F, 2I, 2R?
Wait, let me,
Is that what you're saying? Or did you kick some of mine off?
no.
Whatever you're doing on the screen is really helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll let staff catch up.
Can I ask a question while staff is catching up? So if 1B, which is the La Costa multimodal, doesn't get any grant funding, would we bring that back into this process? Or it's going to be part of the infrastructure task force list anyway? How do you think about that, Mayor?
Yeah, that's how I see it, is that we'll have more information then. Many of these projects are part of the infrastructure task force conversation. It's kind of an ongoing thing. The advantage of what we're doing now is that staff is now going to get to the 30% drawings on these, so that'll be helpful, and it would be nice to be doing the same thing with La Costa Avenue, but if we get that grant, it's going to be able to be on a 100% drawing track.
What is 2R?
Oh, it's 2I, 2R, yep. 1A, 1C. Yeah, that's, so is that the list you made a motion to approve, Joy?
The one I see right now is, so I think we added 1I.
Correct. And I think they had that on there. It's yellow, so why is that one yellow?
Yeah. We'll let them catch up with us. See. Then we can ask why yellow, if it stays yellow. Oh, I think we have a
Mayor's, the other ones are yours. We're trying to
Well,
see.
no, I think we're consolidated. So you can get rid of the yellow, put the red on one eye, and I think that's the motion right now, and my second. And when you had it red, it was, you were right on. So,
This one's an addition.
Just-
okay.
So we have 1A, 1C, 1D, 1I, 2C, 2F, 2I, and 2R.
and then 1B with an asterisk with money to be named later if we get a grant, you know.
Can I ask a quick question of the city engineer? Rancho Santa Fe Trail 82, what is the dollar value on that?
It's somewhere around 5 or 6 million, I believe.
Well, so what happened to the 30% drawing plans?
That's,
Sorry
So
to,
that one's already designed. So Trail 82 probably belonged on that last list, so we don't need money for design on that, but it's good to hear your priorities as a council.
So it's in progress, is what you're saying, and it needs to be on the in-progress list.
Yep.
And we've already got, so what we're proposing here is 30, advancing these projects to 30% design. If we pick one that actually has 100% design, then we're back into the whole question of where are we going to get the construction funding?
Right.
And that'll be a budgetary conversation.
You got it.
Okay.
So, thank you. Let me just summarize what the motion is then. I see it as, 1A and 1D combined, 1C, 2C, 2F, 2I, and 2R. Because of the combining of 1A and D, that equals 7 projects. And that's the motion.
and I concur.
So one eye left the screen.
Because it's already 30% design and beyond.
Okay, so what we're voting on is right up there on the screen in red, right?
Do you want me to repeat it one more time? Make sure we're all,
What's that?
1A, 1C, 1D, 2C, 2F, 2I, and 2R.
Correct. Right? Motion by Lyons and second by Ehlers.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Hope they feel better.
Councilmember Hensy, I hope you are feeling better soon, and your little baby Lakey is too. Moving on to
Consent calendar.
the consent calendar.
There.
I would entertain a motion for approval of that.
I will move, but I do have a clarifying question of staff first, and it's not enough to pull it off the consent calendar, but it has to do with, sorry, I'm now flipping to the number, but it has to do with the one about the business district and application of the speed limits. And I know when we talked about this item in the past, Mayor, you had asked them to look at D Street to Encinitas Boulevard. And I don't think that ended up in the project, so if you could just clarify, that'd be great.
Sure, Councilmember. Yes, as promised, Council, we did take a deeper look after that council meeting into possible extension of the business district north of D to Encinitas Boulevard. However, out of the 4 criteria that 3 of which we had to meet, we are missing 2 criterions. One is the distance between B and Encinitas Boulevard and D had to be a maximum of 600 feet for it to be eligible for business district. It's around 1,000 feet, 990 feet. And we also needed to have a mid-block crossing uncontrolled, which we had to create, but we couldn't find a proper location for it. We did look at some potential alternatives in the Lucadia Pizzeria area, their driveway or further south, but you remember we had a fatality, a motorcycle. There is a grade there, it's not a proper location. It's mid-block. Nobody expects a crossing there with B and D being both signalized. So we thought it wouldn't be a proper application. And also, to add to that, we know that July 1st, this segment that's already 30 mile per hour with the AB 43 kicking in, we'll be able to bring it with that to 25 anyways. So for the benefit of 6 months, doing it sooner to go ahead and add a mid-block crossing at a location that we're not very comfortable with, we thought we would table it for now and wait 6 months.
Okay, thank you. And before we vote, I also wanted to comment on 8E, which is awarding a contract to Rail Pros for the design and engineering on the quiet zone. I'm very pleased to see that on the agenda and happy to approve it. Rail Pros is currently working on the at-grade crossings in Leucadia, so there's some work that they're doing there that is important as well for the quiet zone. This is now that NCTD is done with their study, we're going to accelerate this pace a bit and hope to get ourselves positioned for grant funding to construct the supplemental safety measures that are necessary to establish the quiet zone. So thanks to staff for all the effort that you put into that, and I look forward to them getting to work. Councilmember Ehlers.
I'll second the motion, by the way.
Oh, was that a motion for?
How are you?
No, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure we're all clear that the quiet zone that we are going to have the engineering done for only goes to Leucadia Boulevard, and we're getting a white paper about north of there, right? So in other words, it was a little confusing when it was called citywide quiet zone. It's kind of two phases. This is really only the engineering on the Leucadia and south with anticipate white paper to tell us what to do north of there for a future quiet zone.
Yes, the crossings will require that we, the white paper, whatever you want to call it, we're going to need to do the work that San Clemente did in order to put at-grade crossings in that were outside of the quiet zone, get waivers possibly. But I think that's one of the advantages of having the same consulting firm, the same professional firm doing both the at-grade crossing design as well as the quiet zone design.
And then there'll be a future Rail Pros contract to then complete the quiet zone north of there, right? That's my understanding based on staff's briefing.
Yeah, so whatever is going to be required by the CPUC north of there, we'll have to address once we get those details.
Okay.
So we're ready to vote? Yes.
Motion carries unanimously with Hensy absent.
Okay, item 10A is going to be City Council to consider and direct staff to initiate an ordinance implementing new legislation that went into effect on January 1, 2023, pursuant to Assembly Bill 2097.
Good evening, Mayor Kranz, Deputy Mayor Lyons, council members, and members of the public. I'm Joel Svetko, Associate Planner in Advanced Planning, and with me is Carrie Kusiak, Development Services Director, and we're here today to present the AB 2097 implementation item. So AB 2097 was signed by the governor on September 22nd, 2022, and became effective on January 1st, 2023. The new law establishes that a public agency cannot impose or enforce any minimum automobile parking requirement on a residential, commercial, or other development project if the project is located within 1/2 mile of public transit. The legislature clearly articulated the intent of the new law, finding that parking minimums increase the cost of housing, limit the number of available units, lead to an oversupply of parking spaces, and increase greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, the new law establishes that it shall be interpreted in favor of the prohibition of the imposition of mandatory parking minimums. The new law defines public transit as a major transit stop, which is defined by Government Code Section 21064.3 as an existing rail or bus rapid transit station, a ferry terminal served by either a bus or rail transit service, or the intersection of two or more major bus routes with a frequency of service interval of 15 minutes or less during the morning and afternoon peak commute periods. Under this definition, the city's only major transit stop is Encinitas Station. The NCTD Breeze bus routes that operate in the city have service intervals that generally range from 20 minutes to 1 hour, with some variation. So there are 3 specific plan areas that are located within a half mile of the Encinitas Station site. These are downtown Encinitas, the North 101 corridor, and Encinitas Ranch. AB 2097 applies to residential, commercial, or other development projects. In terms of defining what is a development project, we look to the Encinitas Municipal Code, which defines development as the division of a parcel of land into 2 or more parcels, the construction, reconstruction, conversion, structural alteration, relocation, or enlargement of any structure, any mining, excavation, landfill, or land disturbance, and any use or extension of the use of land. In addition, Government Code Section 66000A defines a development project as a project involving the issuance of a permit for construction or reconstruction, but not a permit to operate. Building on that, staff interprets a development project to include any new construction, any addition to an existing structure, a commercial tenant improvement, land division, grading, and other construction or reconstruction activities for which the city issues a permit. A development project does not include short-term vacation rentals, business licenses, use permits for a change of use only, the provision of outdoor dining areas that do not require a construction permit, and other activities that do not include construction or reconstruction. AB 2097 is not applicable to hotels, motels, bed and breakfast inns, or other transient lodging. And it does not supersede requirements on development projects to provide parking spaces for electric vehicles and persons with disabilities. So parking minimums can be applied if findings are made within 30 days of receiving a completed application that not imposing parking requirements would negatively impact the ability to meet specified housing needs, and these are the low and very low income RENA allocation, and special housing needs for seniors and persons with disabilities, and existing residential or commercial parking within a half mile of the development. These findings cannot be made if the development, 1, dedicates a minimum of 20% of units to very low, low, or moderate income households, students, the elderly, or persons with disabilities. 2, contains fewer than 20 units, or 3, is subject to parking reductions based on the provisions of another applicable law. So the Coastal Commission issued a memo on AB 2097 on June 30th, 2023, and it stated that local governments and the Commission cannot require minimum parking in areas designated by AB 2097, and that local governments must find other ways to ensure that new development complies with the Coastal Act and the local coastal program. And finally, that the Coastal Act and AB 2097 should be harmonized to the maximum extent feasible. In the interim period before an ordinance is adopted, staff will implement the provisions of AB 2097 on a project-level basis and ensure that individual projects include sufficient measures to support the coastal access policies of the local coastal program. The memo references possible mitigation measures to reduce impacts to coastal access, such as investing in public transit and developing programs that facilitate public access by For example, creating free shuttles to the coast and imposing special project conditions that facilitate public transit, alternative transportation, and additional public access opportunities, such as requiring bicycle parking or in lieu fees to mitigate the impacts of development on public access and recreation. The memo provides examples of coastal development permits that mitigated for public access impacts through support or development of public and alternative transportation options, such as transportation demand management programs, bicycle parking and infrastructure, micro-mobility programs, and reduced rates for car-free hotel rooms. So with that, staff recommends the following. 1, to provide specific direction on key provisions to include in the ordinance and provide feedback. And 2, to adopt resolution number 2023-107, directing staff to initiate amendments to the municipal code, the downtown Encinitas North 101 corridor, and Encinitas Ranch specific plans, and the local coastal program to implement state law AB 2097, prohibiting minimum automobile parking requirements on residential, commercial, and other development projects within 1/2 mile of public transit. And that resolution is included as attachment 1. This concludes staff's presentation, and we are available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any
No
public speakers? Council members? I would move approval of this item.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought clarifying questions.
Oh, there's no public speakers, so we go right to the
You're moving
meat.
fast.
Right to it.
Yeah. So I have some questions. Then.
Okay.
Okay. So first question is, what is our minimum EV requirement today, prior to this law?
Councilmember Ehlers, the minimum EV parking requirement is established by the California Building Code. So essentially what the provision means in the AB 2097 related to EV parking and accessible parking is that when parking is required, when parking is provided, which someone can do voluntarily, they still have to meet the applicable California Building Code rules related to EV parking and to accessible parking in terms of the number provided in relation to the total number of parking spaces provided.
Okay, that's a ratio too, but if it's 0, does that mean 0 EV parking going forward, or can we, what is the limit to which we have discretion that we can require EV parking?
That would be requiring parking, so that would not be in compliance with AB 2097. You can only apply the state laws that are in place that currently require those types of parking spaces when parking is provided.
And so what are other cities doing with this? Like, did you get a chance to look at Carlsbad?
So generally other cities are, there's a couple cities, including Carlsbad, that have issued kind of papers on and guidelines on how to apply it. There aren't any local cities that we know of that have started an ordinance process, but we're in following the Coastal Commission memo, which suggests pretty strongly that local coastal programs should be amended to include provisions to address this. So we're asking to move forward so that we can start that process and have the discussions on how to apply it and have some teeth to the measures that we would need to ensure that we're meeting local coastal program policies.
So I pulled the Carlsbad memo that described bulletin, they call it, and it says the parking requirement for EVs is based on the total number of actual parking spaces that would have otherwise applied to the development if the state code section did not exist. So that seems to say that right now they have a table, and I don't know whether it's by ordinance how they did it, but at least they have a policy that is greater than the building code, and it's actually up to what the current requirement. And I'm not saying that that's where we would have to go. What I'm asking is, do we have the flexibility to require? Because, I forget the ratio we've had, but the ratio has been down in the below 20% of our parking was EV, maybe 14%. I don't recall. It's been a while since I've seen that. But where we're going with EVs and I'll call it non-carbon-based cars is more and more of them, right? There's probably 10 to 20% people buying them right now. I believe with the life of a typical project being 50 to 75 years, we should be leading that and trying to get more EV parking because we don't have EV charging on street corners or where it's street parking. And the effect of this project, of this law, is to push all the parking that would have been on site or is on site today out into the streets. So we need to have some place to charge all these future EV cars and current EV cars, for that matter, in these projects. So is there something we can do to look and determine what that upper level number is or what our discretion range is?
Yeah, our understanding, based on the research we've done so far and in talking with, looking at various information that's available about this, is that we cannot require any parking. It's simply what we can require as a part of parking. That's certainly something we can explore more as we develop the ordinance, and we do intend on, once we learn a few things about it and we develop some possible ways to address the various things we can address, we can bring back more information to the council on that item. And if we have any flexibility to require those items, those type of spaces, we'll let you know.
Okay, and I would recommend maximum flexibility there. At least I want to know what we can and can't do, because this major transit stops, we have one, Carlsbad has two, but I think one of the questions during our briefing is that I asked bus routes, if we had a high-frequency bus route crossing somewhere where we had two of them crossing somewhere else in the city, we could end up with a second area that would have the same impact. And of course, every time there's a remodel, every time there's an expansion, the new parking requirement, or I should say the no parking requirement, would apply. So what we're going to see within the train station half-mile radius is, over time, off-street parking will go down asymptotically to zero as each lot converts or develops, or could. Granted, hopefully there's still a market need for parking. There was one other question I had, which is, shoot, let me find it. The map. Carlsbad, I looked at their map, and they go down to the parcel. So I think that's useful because of the, according to their data sheet too, they do it parcel by parcel, and I think that's the way the law is written too. And they said that if at least 75 of a project, of a lot, 75% of a total project site is located within half mile, then it counts. Obviously, if it's less than that, then it's outside. So you could have projects that the radius line goes through. Some are going to be in, some are going to be out. For reason of clarity, I hope we would go with the same route of having a parcel by parcel description map that shows who's in, who's out, based on the exact words of the law.
Yeah, Councilmember Ehlers, the map we have actually is parcel-based. It's just that the scale that's provided doesn't kind of get to that level, but we will have a tool available through our online mapping that will show people particularly where that line lies, so they're able to make that calculation.
So the map actually did the calculation of 75% or 90% of 100 units or more, that type of?
We would have the applicant do that if somebody was interested on one of those parcels, because it kind of is driven by for the residential at least, is driven by where they place the units.
Yeah.
So we'd have to be flexible in how we look at that and allow on a project by project basis, determine those bordering projects, whether or not they would apply or not, depending upon the use provided.
And I'm looking at page 30 of the staff report, and that's a smooth line. So I don't think it does what you just said, but you agree that we'll do it in the future.
Yeah. So the line, we don't. identify each parcel, but the line goes through a parcel, and where the line goes through a parcel, they would need to show that. But this is in terms of how this map was represented with the imagery shown, that the parcel lines aren't forward, but it is part of the mapping in the background that will be available through online tools.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Thank you. I just have two questions. I see that they have a good list of things that we should be doing, and I think that's what Councilmember Ehlers was referring to as far as electric vehicle charging. Many of these things we already do. So is there a way that we demonstrate that we do some of these things as far as demonstrating to the Coastal Commission, or could you explain that process?
Sure, yeah, as you know, as we develop the ordinance and we look at the various things that we could do to support local coastal program policies, we'll take into account the things that we already require and or do or provide as a part of our conversations with, when we get into conversations with Coastal Commission, who we will engage as we develop the ordinance to ensure we're moving in a direction that they're going to eventually approve, because it will be subject to their approval. But we'll be sure that we include discussion of all the things that we're already doing, and as well as the things we think should be done.
And as far as the things we think should be done is my second comment, which is the item that is described as shared parking arrangements that encourage or require private parking areas to be made available for public parking during times when these parking areas are underutilized. We may have some informal arrangements between businesses and things like that, but I don't think the city has ever helped to move forward parking sharing like that. So I would just provide my comment to you at this point that would be something I would like to see us look into and formalize that, so that we can, even sharing city hall parking at times that would be a benefit to others. That's it for my comments.
Okay, thank you. And I do agree with Councilmember Ehlers he pointed out that hopefully this will still remain a market-driven issue, because just maxing out the development without providing some level of parking isn't likely to endear yourself to whatever residents or customers that may be part of that building. So, but I, like Councilmember Ehlers, also want to do everything we can for EV parking. And so communicating with Carlsbad to see, on what grounds they have made their requirements might be helpful. But I know that the ordinance development process will allow for the opportunity to get a lot of input, and I look forward to that. Meanwhile, this law is in effect, right? So we have projects that may come forward before we've developed the ordinance and amended our LCP that would possibly be required to be processed under this. And so we're applying the law, the state law at this time?
Yes, we are, Mayor Crayons, and we've had a couple discussions with a few potential project proponents that would like to utilize this, and we've basically discussed the same things with them that you saw you'll see in the Coastal Commission memo that's attached to your staff report, and we've had good reception to folks providing transportation demand management programs, like requiring that uses that establish themselves within that project provide transit passes to their employees, to provide plenty of bike parking, in particular bike parking that can accommodate the larger needs of electric bikes, as well as the potential for contributing to bike lane improvements and other things that help increase the use of other modalities of transportation outside the vehicle.
Yeah, and my hope is that we can condition projects based, require transit passes for employees and such, because the premise of this law is that a major stop like this is going to encourage the use of public transportation. So, my hope is that we can affect some of that desire in the projects that we process and approve. Seeing no other requests to speak, I will make a motion to approve this. Staff recommendation.
Would you add a friendly amendment to maximize or at least to identify what the bounds, the upper bounds of EV parking
Sure,
requirements
I
would
don't
be?
mind making that part of the motion.
And I'll second then.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimously with Councilmember Hensy absent.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 10C, which is the Pacific View Cultural Arts Center Programming and Commission for the Arts Mission and Vision Statements. And we're going to consider the results of public survey and some of the programming ideas that are being proposed as part of the grand opening of Pacific View, which we hope is in June. June. Sometime after the first of the year. Yes, they're moving fast. That is good. We like that. The faster, the better.
Good evening. I am Colette Murphy, Arts Administrator, and I am joined with Roy Sapao. What are we? We are interim Parks and Rec
what are you,
Director,
Roy?
and he's
What
wearing
are
so
you,
many
Roy?
hats. And Deputy City Manager, thank you, and Vice Chair of the Commission for the Arts, Katie Fox, and Project Manager for Core Design Group, Ryan Walker. Thank you very much. Good evening. We are here tonight to consider the results of a public survey and programming recommendations by the Commission for the Arts and Ad hoc Committee for the Pacific View Cultural Arts Center, and to take council's direction on next steps, and also to have council consider approval of the Commission for the Arts recommended mission and vision statements for the Pacific View Cultural Arts Center. Before we get started, a little background. In February 2022, council's direction was clear when they said, when they directed staff to provide a proposal and timeline for a cultural arts center relying on the permitted uses within existing buildings, that their intention was to activate the site as an art center without triggering any discretionary or planning permits. 3 criteria are critical to consider in determining programming that fit council's direction. Zoning establishes the permissible uses for the site. Those options are narrowed by those that can operate within the existing buildings after the current renovations. And then the building's occupancy classification further defines and tapered the possible uses. This chart shows a snippet of arts and culture land uses with their zone requirements. The occupancy for the site is Class B, which provides for a maximum of 17 to 19 persons per classroom, which are indicated in the blue areas. And the numbers shown are the maximum numbers for that room. The yellow areas are administration areas, with this upper one. This is the public lobby, so it will be staff workstations with a public lobby area with very limited occupancy. To better assist staff in developing programming that met council's directive, it was important to engage the Commission for the Arts and key stakeholders in the community. In addition to the ad hoc meetings, the Commission for the Arts held a public workshop at the library where many members of the public shared their programming recommendations. The commission also discussed the item at an additional public meeting that drew significant community input. Site visits included commissioners and other members of the community of the Pacific View site. General category suggestions from the ad hoc, from the Commission for the Arts, and the community included a broad spectrum of the arts, including visual, performing, and literary, as well as some more niche recommendations, such as healing and botanical arts, plus arts, business, and communication arts. The ad hoc made additional general recommendations that were echoed by the commission and the community for things like offering scholarships and ensuring that those opportunities were connected to the audiences in need, to plan for a variety of participant demographics, including both ability within the arts as well as any specialized needs and intergenerational opportunities, to include programs for varied abilities, specialized needs, to incorporate use of recycled materials in some classes, and to offer practical classes that teach people and organizations specifically how to use the arts, how to incorporate it in a way that helps them run their arts practice. And then diverse instructors with professional artists and an artist in residence program, which does not include a habitation element. It is a concept that would involve a professional artist, perhaps, who would come in on an interim basis and share their practice and work within the different genre. And there are a number of different models, and it is one of the items in the Commission's work plan to be doing research on that, and there are potential grant opportunities. There was an agreement on establishing some specified uses for rooms that would also allow for a variety of programming among the ad hoc and commission. Some items are only available in certain rooms, such as access to water or increased power. And while not on this initial list of programming suggestions, if a kiln were ever to be incorporated, it would need to be adjacent to room 8 because that is where the additional power resource is located. And then the performing arts would need, especially dance, would need a special floor and walls covered in mirrors to make the program more successful. Among the council-approved Commission for the Arts work plan goals for this fiscal year are to review and advise on the programming model for the new Pacific View Arts Center, and to develop mission and vision statements for use in the fundraising and promotion of it. The Commission for the Arts engaged the community in the mission and vision statement development process with a public workshop that was facilitated by Rob Dayton, a professional who specializes in this kind of work. The public actively participated in the process of developing a draft mission statement, and Mr. Dayton continued the process with the commissioners at a public meeting to develop the vision statement with contributions from members of the public. The commission held a third meeting to review the work of the prior two and vote to recommend statements to City Council for approval. The next step was a public survey. It gathered information from the community about their interests in the permissible arts programming categories that had been recommended by the ad hoc and commission. Highlights include that there were 603 households, not just people, but households who responded based on both the adults and the children within their household and what their interests were. 84% of those responding households were Encinitas residents. 98% of the adults shared that they planned to attend classes, and the children or the adults on their behalf shared that 93% of the children would plan to attend. And additionally, there was a question that asked about their enthusiasm, and 53% of adults and 47% of children responded to the option that said, yes, looking forward to it, exclamation point. Adult interests are wide, with visual art, drop-in studio, music, fiber art, dance, botanical art, literary art, and healing arts appealing to at least 50%, and other programs were also of significant interest. The youth interests in classes and school break camps is high, with visual art, music, dance, drama, fiber art, and literary art as their dominant preferences. Examples of some of the suggested equipment to facilitate the recommended programming include some of these items. It is not an exhaustive list, and one of the elements that needs to be worked through in the planning is that space and storage are issues on site. That is the conclusion of the presentation. Are there any questions?
The list that you put together of the brainstorming list, what sessions were those, was that list made? The ad hoc committee? A commission meeting?
It started with the ad hoc, developing that brainstorming list, and then was brought into the larger community discussions and with the work that the commission did.
Okay. And there's some discussion about photography here, analog and digital. Does that mean there's an expectation that there will be a dark room as part of these rooms, or is it?
Not at this time. At some point in the future, that could be something that is explored. There are some uses that could be possible. However, either due to funding or due to the way that the rooms can be configured right now, it's not part of what we could launch per that direction from February of, let's make sure we've got everything that just goes smoothly through.
And I love the list. I would say that especially for a period of time, which, you know, for the sake of discussion, a year maybe is the right, to see how things shake out, I would like to limit any modifications we make to the rooms, any acquisition of equipment, that sort of thing, until we see how this shakes out. I do want to encourage photography, especially in young people. I think having a set of studio lights is a good idea, and, you know, working with professionals who can teach young people lighting techniques is, I think, very valuable, so I would encourage that. Honestly, the list is really great. I think it would have been nice to have surfboard art specifically mentioned, but I know it fits in the visual art category. I hope we can encourage surfboard artists and people who never thought about a surfboard as a medium for painting, to encourage that, because we have some really fantastic artists that are applying themselves in that particular area. We have in our community Peter St. Pierre, who's a surfboard Hall of Famer in pinstriping, and you know, the art that goes into the making of a surfboard is, to me, a fine art. So I hope we can encourage that. But great work. I don't see any other speaker requests, so can we have the public speakers?
Absolutely. I'll call you three at a time. The first three speakers, Jennifer Marakovitz, Marie Michelle Jasmine, John Humphrey, and John does have time donation from Steve Barlotti and Patrick Danforth.
Good evening, Mayor Krantz and the council members. My name is Jennifer Marakovitz, and I'm a commissioner for the arts, and I'm just loving the experience. I love it. I'm so happy to do it. I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission. I just felt really inspired to speak about the wonderful things I think that are going on in Encinitas. I just wanted to express about it. I wanted to first say I'm grateful for all those who've worked hard in years past to develop the strong civic arts program that we're seeing manifest to date, and including the development of the Pacific View Arts Center. I think it's exciting. It's amazing to see the transformation every week, and I ran into you the other day, I kind of go over there and watch it. It's amazing to see it, and I'm grateful to be a part of the evolution of the arts right now, and seeing the implementation, and then eventually the sustaining of the arts. So I'm a music educator, and I work in the southern part of the county in a district that really greatly supports the visual arts. However, what I've noticed in Encinitas is that, and what makes my heart really, really warm and strong, I've noticed a strength of the civic arts program soaring in Encinitas, and it's very exciting. Working in an arts field like I've been doing my entire life is a continual work in which one never rests. I just never rest. And the arts have to have a positive effect on people, and I've seen it many times over. So as we continue to grow in the arts, and it enriches our society in Encinitas. And next year we're looking forward to the launch of the piano competition and for grades K through 12. And we're hoping to have entries, and I'm hoping that piano at the community center is going to be smoking. Actually, beyond that, flames and smoke coming out of it, because we have some great pieces that'll be played on it. If you have a little pencil, you can write down Shostakovich Concerto No. 2, Mozart Piano Concerto No. 23, and Beethoven Concerto No. 1. And I think you'll find it very edifying, and when you sit down at night and you listen to it, it'll be very relaxing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to clarify.
I swiped this, but I'll put it back.
Okay. I'd like to clarify that we didn't run into each other. I was riding my bike, and we didn't, we waved, but we didn't run into each other, right? Yes.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Marie-Michel. I am French-Canadian. I moved here 3 years ago. And I'm a filmmaker. I most recently worked with the Santa Fe Opera and the Los Angeles Ballet. And I live 1 block from Pacific View, actually half a block from Pacific View. And so I'm here tonight to share my enthusiasm for what's going on. I'm so excited. And also to advocate for the inclusion of film in the programming. When I moved here, and then even more recently when I was preparing for tonight, I sort of did a basic research of all the different art centers within the county, and was a bit disheartened to see that there's absolutely no film offerings anywhere from San Diego to Oceanside. There are obviously within the school system on a high level. Even there's not that much, certainly not in this town. And so, excuse me, I was a little bit disheartened, and I also think that we have a very privileged position, like geographically, because we're halfway, sort of, not quite halfway, but between Los Angeles and San Diego. I think it would be a very important, film is a huge economic motor in California. I actually spoke with the California Film Commission today before coming here to sort of make sure I had the right numbers. 700,000 jobs. There's $70 billion a year that go in wages for in-state workers, and $27 billion in payments to 359,000 local businesses. So what I'm trying to say is that I think it's important to plant the seed of the importance of film in young people and adults, because you can start your career at any moment. Obviously, film is everywhere. There is not just on Netflix, but also video content on our cell phones. It really is the way of the future. And I think we have a responsibility to open people's horizons. And so I guess in closing, I'd like to say that I think there's great possibility for visiting artists, workshops within what we have classroom-wise. And I'm very excited, and I hope you consider this when you're making your recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. In literary arts, script writing is listed. There are some other areas where it might work into filmmaking, but is there a reason there wasn't an explicit category for filmmaking?
The expense of the equipment.
The expense of the equipment. If somebody wants to teach a class and has their own equipment, we can provide them a room for that?
We are currently accepting contract instructor applications, and so that is certainly something that can be considered. Certainly that might raise the cost of the class for the participant, and that was one of the considerations as well, was making sure there was a balance, that not every class that was offered was prohibitively expensive. So some classes, just by their nature, are going to be more expensive than others that don't require as much. So seeking a balance there.
Okay, thank you. And to follow up before the next speaker, we'll have to talk a little bit about this brainstorming list, whether each of these disciplines implies city acquisition of equipment or materials for the classes, so that we can be clear on that.
If I also may say, iPhones and I mean, any phone for that matter can be used. I think there's ways to do it,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning without too much cost. So,
Right.
thank you.
Next speaker is John Humphrey with 2-time donations, followed by Carolyn Cope, Irene Abraham, and then Kaylee Nunez.
Hello, my name is John Humphrey, and I am the current president of the EACEA, which is the Encinitas Arts, Culture, and Ecology Alliance. I'm kind of here today to, like everybody else, kind of convey our excitement. I'm also here with the other 5 founding board members who have been banging away on this project for almost 9 years now. I think we're coming around the corner on 9 years since I think the building was purchased in 2014. And in 2015, just a brief history for people that may or may not know, we've been through 3 mayors, multiple council members, and I just wanted to kind of point out that our organization has done a lot for this, to move this project along, and I think we've been stewards to move it along, and we are very supportive of this becoming an arts center, but we're also would like to be kind of point out maybe in a visual display that we have a slideshow here of what we've done to kind of steward the project. And, as I was thinking about looking at the report, there's a thing in here saying that, these people stepped it up, but some other people, nobody else wanted to be involved. And I'm kind of here to set the record straight that we have been involved from day one, and we continue to want to be heavily involved in this project. So excited that the money finally came in. We spent a lot of time, and I won't get into the weeds of what happened in the development of the project. I'm only here to say that I'm really happy that it's being developed and we're coming down the finish line. If we could just roll this slideshow real quick, just to kind of give anybody who may or may not know how much has gone into this project just a little history of what's happened in the last 8 years and our contribution to it.
Is that the video?
It's just a slideshow, yeah. Okay, so that, we just, like I said, we kind of wanted to put that together to kind of help refresh some memories of how many people have put a lot of work into there, not just our organization. And as we move forward with, you know, the new planning and stuff, we would like to respectfully request that perhaps the council or the staff could consider giving us a credit of some sort to maybe for the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we put into the building, to be the stewards of it from the point where we took it to the point where we got the ARP funds or whatever they were to take it where it's the next level. We have a lot of great operational things that we'd like to be included in. I don't know what happened with I don't know where the lines got crossed with our organization not really being included in the ad hoc committee, but we definitely would like to be involved. We're as committed as ever. And I did want to point out a couple things in there. Most people in this room probably know who Garth Murphy is. He was in it from day one. He was a co-founder with me. He used to joke about, I'm probably going to die before this thing ever takes place. He had a stroke this year, and he is incapacitated, but he's still, even today, sitting over there giving advice on what he wants to see this thing through. So thank you.
Thanks, and I appreciate the video. I appreciate the fact that you guys paid through contributions for the roofing. It was a critical bridge to where we are now to keep the building from falling down. I appreciated seeing Rachel White in there. She brought her church for a weekend of work, and that was a critical part of cleaning the site up. So appreciate all the work that you've done, and we'll talk a little bit more about your idea here as soon as the public comments is over.
Great, thank you.
Next speaker is Carolyn Cope, followed by Irene Abraham, and then Keely Nunez.
I'm Carolyn Cope, Encinitas, and I am the current president of the Encinitas Historical Society, and we are stewards of the museum that's on property, the 1883 one-room schoolhouse, and we're very proud of keeping it happy and healthy. And we're, of course, very excited about Pacific View. I've been involved with the committee from day one, mainly because I wanted to know what they were up to, because whatever they do is going to affect the Historical Society, and whatever the Historical Society might affect them. But no, we all work together very well. We are the museum on property, and whatever happens at the Pacific View property, we want to be involved. We want to be somehow included in maybe programming. How can we help the Pacific View Arts and Culture Center be better? And the schoolhouse be more prominent, and what can we offer in the historic aspect of the museum aspect of Pacific View. But it has been rough at times with getting things done and watching the vandalism that was just rampant until, thank goodness, the city did jump ahead and move forward with this project, and we're really happy about that. Because we are the only thing that's opened, we're only there on Saturdays. I'm there every day watching the Pacific View become, it's becoming wonderful construction company. They've been very helpful to us. I have them move heavy objects often. But we just all want to partner together. We want to make this happen, and we're stoked to be at this point. But many years, we put a lot of time and money and effort and elbow grease into Pacific View, and I'm stoked to see where it is. We are quizzed every week. Everybody comes that sees the schoolhouse. What's going on over here? So we're probably more of the mouthpiece of Pacific View project, and we're glad to do it. So thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Krantz and council members. I'm Irene Abraham. I'm a member of the Arts Commission, and I'm just really excited about hearing everybody talk about Pacific View and how well things are going now. And I wanted to add a statement that the Arts Commission voted on last week at our meeting, and we sent it to the council members, but I wanted to read it here. We, the members of the Encinitas Commission for the Arts, would like to wholeheartedly reaffirm our support for the Pacific View Arts Center as a place dedicated in full to arts education, exploration, and discovery. We'd also like to thank the members of the Encinitas City Council for their unequivocal support for this long-held vision for Pacific View as evidenced by past votes and comments. We look forward to continuing to lend our knowledge and advice to help make Pacific View a place where the Encinitas community can gather and experience the full power of creative expression. Thank you.
My name is Keely Nunez, and this is Brenna Fleener. I brought notes just to keep it concise to 3 minutes. So we're both longtime local residents, pretty much born and raised in Encinitas. I'm a former educator, and I actually live about a block from Pacific View, and Brenna is a former student that attended PAC View. So we're very interested in what's going on with the project. We're so excited to see more progress happening with PAC View, and really happy to see that this space is coming back into the public realm. We were lucky enough to join one of the Arts Council meetings over the summer, and we had a chance to meet in person with Colette and Travis a couple months ago. We're here tonight to really just start the conversation about the long-term potential for PAC View, and specifically the possibilities of eventually expanding the permitted uses of the site to reach more community members and provide a benefit to the city. We have some key questions, so I'll just list them off. How are you envisioning ongoing funding and future potential of revenue generation to support all of the wonderful art programs that are being planned for Pacific View? How are you planning to use this space that's outside of those interior classroom spaces for broader community activities? Is there a possibility to get outside spaces rezoned for a variety of uses? How might we continue to expand the usage of the space to offer greater diversity of programming or general usage of the space so that it might reach a larger audience within the Encinitas community? Is there an opportunity to gather input from the community that falls outside of these arts programs? So Colette mentioned some outreach that's already happened. Is it possible to have a broader outreach through maybe, Encinitas Unified School District to reach just a broader population of the community? So those are our thoughts. Thank you for your time, and we're excited to be a part of this conversation.
That concludes public comments.
Okay, thank you. I would speak to the questions that you asked by saying that the conditional use permitting that will be required in order to expand activities will take some time, and it's also part of, I think, that 1-year time frame where we see how things are working using the approach that we directed a while ago, which is to not require any additional permitting and comply with the current zoning code, but it is definitely part of the future plans. I also received, I think we all received an email from former Mayor Teresa Barth asking a question about the possibility of having minor use permitting that would cover some activities like swap meets and outdoor sales. Is that too something that would be in the next phase sort of thing, the next leg of the use of the site?
That is correct.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
I have a lot of comments and questions. I'll kind of meter them out, but I want to first respond to what I feel some of the questions and comments were from the public. And I want to throw my support behind John's request to be acknowledged, EACEA, and I personally apologize for any oversight that appeared in that acknowledgement. It's my view that they were the heart and soul that really pushed forward and did a very good job. And I think it was so hard for a nonprofit to overcome the facilities improvements that were needed, and that's when the city acknowledged that we needed to step in and help with that. That's my consolidated summary of what happened, but no fault of AECEA, and I think they were they had such heart in bringing it to where it could go in the time they had it. I do want to also emphasize what Carolyn said about the Historical Society. We are so lucky to have the Historical Society on the same property, and it's a successful entity. It has a lot of energy, it has a lot of enthusiasm, and it's been there forever. It's historic, for goodness sake, just like Pacific View. So there's so many opportunities to really get a lot of momentum behind the fact that the Historical Society's there, and now we're going to have the Pacific View. And I think it's really, there's some practical things, like we should put our heads together formally, maybe do something like a memorandum of understanding where we understand how we coordinate together with the Historical Society and with the city, so that we make sure we just understand who's responsible for what, how do you handle the parking, and, all these new things that we'll realize, oh yeah, we have to agree, we have to have an understanding about how we exist on this property together. I do want to also, I'm jumping around a little bit, I apologize. I do want to say that I like the comments of Keely and her partner there who came up to say that there's so many other opportunities here. And I'm like, yeah, there really are. We need to keep it simple at first because we do have some limitations. We're trying to keep it all within the existing code. We don't have all the money we need to do everything we want. But everyone, keep in mind, we want to develop the site so we can have some activities and some events within the permitted uses, and really take advantage of the fact that there's this amazing property that's just got awful asphalt on it right now. So we can do better, and we want to. But we need to move one step at a time. I want to tease out the film question, because when I read the code, I see that I interpret it as film would be fine, but the brainstorming list didn't include it, and I think the only reason you said, Colette, was that it may be a cost thing. So I agree with Mayor Kranz that let's sort out what our expectations are on the city's costs. We don't absolutely, my opinion, we don't absolutely need to bear the costs. We're providing the venue, but we haven't made that decision yet, I guess. Where does the city's responsibilities? Where are the limits of the city's responsibilities and what our expectations are? And then where do the educators who come in, where are their responsibilities? So there may be more to say on that.
Sure, and just to clarify, within that brainstorming list, some of those are some big categories and film can fit within visual, it fits within performing in some aspects. So just because a type of art is not specifically listed, it could be a subset of one of those others. So film was not excluded.
Yeah, and I kind of knew that because it was on the survey, but it was like a subheading of a subheading, so it was kind of little. And perhaps maybe it should be bigger. So since it was on the survey, I thought, well, okay, it's allowed. I wonder if we could talk about in the future too, having future involvement by the Arts Commission And I don't know what that would be. I'm just saying they've really been passionate about bringing, connecting with what the vision and mission are for Pacific View. And if maybe in the work plan, the Arts Commission work plan, there's an item for them to continue to somehow be engaged and maybe facilitate public comment. Or I'm spitballing, but maybe there's a way they could be involved. I have a question about the permitted uses, and chances are I'm understanding it incorrectly, but I'm looking at the permitted uses I understand are here in our attachment. I see public assembly and I see auditorium. Am I understanding those correctly, that those are allowed?
Yeah, that's correct. You know, anywhere where you see a P in that red box of uses that's related to this zone, that would be a permitted use.
What would be the limitations on public assembly and auditorium?
In terms, I'm not, an auditorium, I think would be something that is not within the kind of physical scope of the building as it sits in terms of how small they are. So I think that'd be something that would need to be built. Public assembly could kind of cover a lot of different possibilities. Anytime you gather the public in a group, it's a public assembly type use. So, like for instance, an outdoor concert venue or just any kind of outdoor gathering event would be considered a public assembly.
Then would the limitation be on what you do in the public assembly? I'm sorry to sound so basic, but I mean, so if you had a public assembly with a music performance, would that be allowed in the building?
I think, it would really depend on council and their direction as to what type of public assemblies they'd like to see there and how they might be limited in terms of ensuring compatibility with the neighborhood.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Ehlers.
So I'll dovetail on that. So the zoning, I think you can look at it two different ways, zoning and permitting. Zoning would allow outdoor public assembly of many different types, concerts, things like that, correct? The zoning.
I would say that's correct, yes.
And then as far as our permit requirements from the Parks Department, that would have a little more discretional limitation that we could apply of what we decide we want and don't want. But I think right now, tonight, the only limitation that that are the ground rules is the zoning limitation in the zoning matrix. So, so then questions, this is more operational in nature as far as, and by the way, this is great, so I support it, but I got some questions as always. Does this free up any space over in the community center? Because I know we have some rooms with mirrors and that are set up for dance. Are we anticipating those continuing to be filled with the current programming and none of that programming would move over here? Just trying
to answer that question is really going to depend on the public demand of that kind of programming. So it is possible we may need both spaces.
Okay. And so then the next question is, as far as administering it, today we get our booklet flyer of classes and programming. Will this be administered, and this will just be an additional facility within that program structure, and so it's really a matter, and we'll offer new classes, maybe more specialized, more into visual arts, more into performing arts, and potentially into future. So this is just an additional facility under that same programming, and staff will handle the administration of it.
Pending council's direction, it is my understanding that is a possible model to follow the way that REC does it, and in terms of having the classes in the way that they're offered, whether they are staff-run or contract instructor-run.
Okay, great. So as far as, it's a cool facility. I have to admit, I didn't know a lot about it 2 years ago, and what probably sold me more than anything was taking a tour of the building when it was deconstructed. And I just, 7 years on the Planning Commission, you learn about construction. you have to look at that raw concrete. Whoever poured that 70 years ago was an artist. It is a beautiful floor still today. I wish the concrete in my house looked that nice. Okay. Number two, the stringers on the ceiling are these huge, 40 foot continuous. You can't buy that lumber anymore, and there's a ton of it up there. And then the windows, I'm so glad we saved them, and just reglaze them with new glass. They're the big, heavy, classic metal ones opening. I know we can't open the back ones, and that was more of a maintenance issue, but awesome. I think it's a gem. What my takeaway from the tour was, it's a lot smaller than I thought. It looks so imposing from the street, and then you go, it's 6 good-sized classrooms and an office. So I think it's very appropriate to save. I think the use is right on. I spent some time going back through the old reports, reading what the current proposed uses, and it's still in line, and I support that 100%. I also support the 1 year and getting a year under our belt to understand, what the money is going to take. The one thing I would add to the 1 year is after a year, I'd like to see our 2002 Arts Master Plan updated to incorporate it and a future vision into the potential use of the theater land over in New Encinitas, and just use the master plan, update the master plan to have an integrated view. We can go through all the public process of doing that and have not only the commission, Arts Commission, Friends of the Art, everybody involved. I'm just curious, I think I see at least 3 or 4 ex-commissioners or current commissioners, arts commissioners out here. So, raise hands of any, that's what I thought, at least 3. So they are involved. They don't go away. They just keep coming back. So great project. The other thing that I forgot, I said future theater, future programming, film. When we talk about film, I think 3 of us sitting up on this desk here have kids that are involved in Hollywood. And so, there's great reason to have film and TV, video involved, mine included, by the way. And then last, I'd like to see, when we get to that 1 year from now, how we coordinate with groups like Lux and ICA, and start bringing the entire community and organizations together. And that's where I see the master plan getting updated. So, great project. Let's keep going.
Thanks. Councilmember Blackwell.
Yes, hi. I have a couple comments, or a couple questions and then comments, but first I just want to say thank you I'll start with the EACEA for all of that effort, because we wouldn't be here today talking about programming if it hadn't been for that effort, and for the Historical Society for continuing to partner, and for the ad hoc committee, the Pacific View Ad hoc Committee, which I think had Arts Commission members, city staff, and even Encinitas Friends of the Arts. Really well done in terms of the programming that you've come up with and reaching out to the public to get their input. My couple questions have to do first with the mission and vision, and I was trying to understand how those would be used, and if the vision statement, which talks about opening windows to ignite creative expression, applies directly to Pacific View, or if it's more generic.
The direction was for it to apply specifically to Pacific View, and Vice Chair Fox can give a little bit more explanation as to how those came to be developed.
Yeah, good evening. We were tasked by council to come up with a vision and mission statement, and we're given 2 meetings to do so, 1 meeting, public meeting for each. I wasn't present, unfortunately, at either meeting, but I did listen in, and we had a facilitator who walked us through very lively and engaged discussion. So the statements that were voted on by the commission that you see here tonight, my feeling is that the content is very directed toward cultivating a creative growth in the community. And that's very important to everyone on the commission, since I'm speaking, I guess, as a commissioner here, that the programming and thus the vision and statement, the vision and mission statement, would be used to facilitate moving forward with written documents, marketing, funding opportunities, such as that.
Great, thank you. And then at a high level, because I know there are 1,000 line items from what comes next, but what happens between tonight and opening?
Pending direction, we then continue moving forward so that we can get an operational plan developed to bring back to council.
And when would that come back? Maybe just in the spring?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and just in closing comments, you know, I do support the mission and vision statement. It'd be good to use that in celebrating the opening of the center and the rest of how the city's commitment to the arts. And then, you know, the community excitement about Pacific View is only going to grow. I think we heard that tonight. Thank you for those comments. People are going to see many new ways to expand upon this solid start. And so I don't think we'll rush that, but I also think it's just, it's good for us to continue building on that momentum. So it's exciting to see what happens next.
Thank you. Couple of comments. Very pleased to get to this point and excited to get the ribbon cut and activities on the site. I think kind of going back through the history and how we got to where we are, and most importantly, the point at which we committed to funding the rehabilitation of the buildings. There was a decision to redefine the use of Pacific View, because when we engaged EACEA as in an exclusive negotiating agreement, the name Encinitas Arts, Culture, and Ecology Alliance suggested that the activities were going to be broader than just arts. And then there was this decision to throw out culture and throw out ecology and focus on the arts. And now I hear statements saying arts only. And it does cause me to pause, because I think that as a public facility, we should be sure that we have the broadest activities possible, certainly under the umbrella of the arts. My wife is a quilter. Some people call that a craft. Does that mean she can't have classes at Pacific View because it's not an art? Yeah, so this definition and focusing on this notion of arts only is important. I see that textiles are up there, but I didn't see quilting in the list. So I just want to say that I'm very interested in getting the site open, getting some classes being operated, and then we would look at other opportunities that there are to engage. I did see there are possibly some opportunities for community gardens and things like that. And while I know that there is a lot of effort to keep it totally focused on arts, I'm interested in making it a place where the community can gather and enjoy the arts. In the meantime, the one question I have relates to that picture of the facility with the parking spaces that are there. Is there any way to get shade trees on the campus there?
There's currently no budget for
Well,
the
so we can resolve that
irrigation.
most likely for some trees.
Right, so just immediately there isn't, but certainly the
So
irrigation would need to be.
That vegetation that we see there is part of a bioswale, I think, for,
Correct, more or less. It basically is an area put aside for future planting. It also acts as a barrier between vehicular parking and pedestrian.
because I think there is going to be, punishing sunshine through those windows if we don't do something about shade, and whether it's the shade structures, which we're taking down the veranda, or putting in trees. I think that that is something that's worth exploring. Yes, ma'am.
Council might recall that when we adopted the budget, our priority for this fiscal year was the building, the renovations, et cetera, getting the furniture and fixtures so we could get the building open. Definitely, we will be bringing something forward for other our Public Works crews will do a great job of making the area look beautiful when it opens, but we know that that's on our to-do list, is that will be connected to the parking lot changes, and that will require some permitting that we need to do, but it's always been the intention for us to bring additional funding forward.
Yeah, so, you know, I just want to make sure that if we're gonna, I think there was gonna be no paving that was part of this project. So what we're seeing here in terms of pavement, there may be pavement there, but if there's not, we're gonna think about how we can incorporate some trees down the road. I don't want to pave and then tear it up, so that's all I'm asking, is that we keep that in mind. I don't have any problem with the mission and vision statement, and I appreciate the efforts to develop that. I think that it's good to have that statement, those statements. I do think we should direct staff to implement the same Parks and Rec programming at this facility for the arts with contract instructors, and like Deputy Mayor Lyons, I believe we should figure out a way to credit EACEA for the $500,000 that they raised to bridge the construction and rehabilitation. So I don't know if that's going to take.
Could you explain, I'm not sure I understand what that means. You mean contract for classes or being able to take classes? Or?
So facility use would, you know, where there is a fee that needed to be paid, there'd be they'd have a ledger where we were, you know, crediting their whatever fees were required of that particular nonprofit from the money that they raised in the interim. I know it means a lot of classes would possibly be offered, but I'd love to detail what that looks like and figure out how they get credit for the work that they put in and the money that they raised.
Thank you, Mayor Krantz. Just to follow up on that, is the request that we provide financial credit, or is credit meaning just plain acknowledgement of their efforts?
No, it's financial.
Okay.
They raised money.
Okay.
So the question is how that would work. I think in the end, it's going to come down to the mechanics of the use of the classroom. So if it's like, you know, it costs $40 an hour to use the classroom, and they have classes that they want to offer, then, you know, if it's a 2-hour class, it's an $80 fee for other instructors. But for EACEA, it might be we do a debit of $80 from their $500,000 credit.
We'll bring back something during the budget for the council to consider. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but we'll meet about it and bring something for you all to consider.
Yeah, that's what
at
I
a
was
later
asking.
date.
We weren't going to design it tonight. I would like to have you work together with them. They could show you the receipts and establish what the value of the contributions that they made to this project. No, it didn't go to the Conan contractor that's doing this finishing touch, but it got us to this point without having, you know, another $1 million or $2 million in work that needed to be done. They re-roofed for one thing. They prepped the windows and did a lot of work there. There was a lot of effort that was put into it. And while I didn't put in very much time, I was there for a lot of their work parties, and it was important work, and got us through a period where we were hoping we could get it open, but never got over the hump. So important stuff. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Yeah, I want to fill in a few gaps on some things as I see it, and thank you, Mayor Krantz, for bringing that up. I do see the acknowledgement perhaps being more verbal and written, because I think that's really important to acknowledge their work. And I see it from the perspective of every property has layers of history that are important to the community. We all touched that property under the oversight of EACEA and the contract the city awarded them, and created a layer that's really important to the story of Pacific View. And I would love to really remember to capture the history of this property, the history of the school, the history that's so important to adults now who were students then, to people who helped when it was overseen by EACEA, to now and into the future, the different layers of history that are going to happen on the property. I hope that when we tell the story of Pacific View, we remember to acknowledge all the layers of history that go way back even further than I even just expressed. But that brings me a little bit off topic. I wanted to get back to when you're talking about our next step being the operations plan. And we had a comment from one of those public speakers about what kind of revenue do you need? How are you going to know what kind of revenue you need? It's like a business plan for this property. I think that's really important. It's the city looks at things differently than a private entity, but this is going to be kind of a quasi-public-private partnership. And so we might not have a lot of experience with that at this level in the city, but with our city manager and staff, I've been talking about, well, what are the opportunities? Because this is an arts center, and it could bring in a lot of interest from a private partner or several private partners for funding and investment, and under what circumstances would that be okay? And, I can think film. I'm looking at you, Marie, in the back, thinking, yeah, you're nodding film. Film as an educational program could bring in funding. And how do we want to really embrace that and allow it to happen, understand the difference between private money and public money, but make it work for us as a city so that this is buoyant, this is revenue positive, so that it's a benefit to the community, and it's able to work with kind of a broader way of thinking about how we get revenue. And so when we talk about operations, I'll defer to staff because you know what you want to put in that, but I think that's a good opportunity because we're going to probably be thinking about costs when we talk about operations. How are we going to then look at the opportunity for a public-private partnership? I wanted to weigh in and give my support for the mission and vision as well. I think that the Arts Commission put in a lot of effort. I actually watched the webcast of it after the fact, and you really put your heart and souls into that, and I think that's absolutely correct, and thank you for doing that. And I support any kind of motion that wants to be put forward to add trees. So I think that goes without saying that I would support anything that's associated with how can we make some good strides forward to really help create a wonderful outdoor space, even if it's just one step at a time. I'm going to be really supportive of that, and I understand that's in the future. That's not right now. The only other thing I wanted to say is I do support, because you're looking for input on the list of activities. As Mayor Krantz said, I do support the broadest range of activities possible within the current allowed zone. Thank you.
Councilmember Ehlers.
And native trees, I'm sure, is what you meant to say, right? Just checking. So, and I would support native trees too. So the public-private, that's intriguing. I don't think we're doing that now, but I like the idea of it. I was going to go to staff and ask. Right now, I think, as I asked previously, it's primarily the Parks and Rec type administration model. Do we have anything within our current programs, not necessarily art, that is a public-private partnership that we could use as a model for what we're trying to do? What Councilmember Lyons proposed?
So we currently don't have a model that that aligns with what Deputy Mayor is suggesting. What we would recommend is, as the mayor recommended, is to activate the site for a year, utilizing the existing programming method that we currently use for our other recreational programs. And while we're implementing those programs, we can continue looking at opportunities for partnership with private entities that after the year, we can bring forward a recommendation on how we can create a plan that would establish that partnership or create a framework that we can use to implement a partnership with private entities.
And I think it's definitely possible, because if I look at, and I know they didn't come to fruition, but the theater over in New Encinitas, there have been a couple of proposals of regional nonprofits coming in, but maybe the one that jumps to mind from a Parks and Rec standpoint is the Y. And we literally have a joint use with the Y facility, and that in many ways is a public-private nonprofit partnership. So I think it makes great sense, especially if we could find some film type of entity that wants to generate interest. So
Yeah, definitely. It definitely makes sense in the arts world. I think there's a lot of interest in the private entity or sector in art. So I think there's a great opportunity there to partner with a private entity. But I would recommend that we move forward with our current method of programming for the initial year, and then we can bring forward a future plan on how to incorporate that.
And I completely agree with that statement. I think it's understanding the demand, which seems to be the big unknown. Everybody seems to go, oh, how much, do we have enough space, not enough space? And what area will the current framework, or not framework, the current breadth of offerings cover? And then we decide if we can add more, if we can engage a partnership, et cetera. So I agree with the 1 year.
Yeah, and I would like to add some historical perspective. Frankly, the agreement that the city made with EACEA as was intended to be a public-private venture. And in fact, the private group, EACEA, was a nonprofit. And, there were a variety of reasons why we weren't able to get to the point where we signed the envisioned lease for $1 a year with them. But a lot of that is water under the bridge. We're now where we are with the building almost ready to be is habitable. And then for the lessons learned in the situation with EACEA, my goal would be to broaden and have our public-private partnership be with more than one nonprofit. And so I think we are blessed with a number of fantastic nonprofit organizations in this city that are engaged in the arts, and we should be encouraging them all to pursue grant funding for their activities and bring those grant opportunities to the Pacific View Arts Center. 101 Artist Colony has certainly been around a long time. There are several really strong enduring arts organizations that we should be engaging in this endeavor. And in fact, EACEA had discussions with the YMCA. They were going to offer activities at Pacific View. The Botanic Garden was going to offer activities at Pacific View. There were a lot of people willing to step up, but then when we shifted gears and went to arts only, it reduced the scope, which, is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think it really is a worthwhile way to start. But we, I think, owe it to the community to keep our minds open about, how this might play out down the road. So I think we need a motion to approve the vision and mission statement. And then I don't know if staff has enough direction for what to bring back in terms of the operations and furnishing of the site.
So yes, we do have direction on the operations plan. I do want to follow up, Mr. Mayor, on your comment about making this center as broad as possible. The original direction from the City Council back in, it was for this to be a cultural arts center. And we are preparing to put the sign up as the Pacific View Cultural Arts Center. My understanding is that, and we have all the experts here, that cultural seems to be more specialized art, that if we keep it broad and just call it the Arts Center, Pacific View Arts Center, that opens up for all different types of art and not just cultural art. So I just wanted to put that out there for discussion.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
And
I want it to be, I don't want anybody to ask for portfolios to see if they qualify as artists to conduct a class.
That's correct.
I don't want to have a cornhole tournaments at this place, you know? So that's not what I meant when I said broad. I
Right.
just mean that we're going to fairly loosely interpret artistic activities. And when you have ideas, rooms dedicated to the healing arts, that by its nature is kind of a broad, you know, and so, you know, that may be a challenge for you all deciding, you know, whether that fits or not.
Yeah.
But
The critical thing is what we're going to call the building, the name that's going to go on the wall, because that is critical right now because we're close to that point where we do have to
oh yeah,
install
yeah, I'm
the
good.
sign.
Yeah, and
They're going to be painting on it.
yeah.
If I may.
Councilmember Ehlers? Oh, go ahead. You may.
It has been a big discussion on the commission, the difference in feeling between the word arts and the word creative. I just wanted to throw that out there. I've talked with people in the community also, just as far as how it feels to say there's a Pacific View Creative Center versus a Pacific View Art Center. And I do not mean to shift the focus away from arts at all, but it does speak to the sense of broadness. And so the content, the offerings, the first iteration could remain exactly the same, but it is something that has been discussed, but I don't know how to ever get it to this point.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ehlers.
So I just wanted to go down the path of creative arts, cultural arts, or just arts, because I think you're looking for the succinct naming. So my first question, as acting Parks, Rec, and Cultural Arts Department head, is why is it named Cultural Arts for the department? And would you consider renaming it too while we're at it?
Yes, please.
And is it the Arts Commission, by the way? It's just the Arts Commission, right?
That is correct.
It
It's
is-
Commission for the Arts.
And it's Encinitas Friends of the Arts.
That is correct.
I personally am for simple. If we pay by the letter, it would be cheaper on the sign. So, you know, just thinking. I would, although I actually like creative arts, but that's, I mean, I think I'd like to hear from the people involved in this more than us. But I personally would go for simpler and go for arts as more generic. Everybody will know what we mean. And so, and it's broad, it includes creative arts, it includes cultural arts, so that's my two bits, and it's
That
up
is
to
our
you.
recommendation.
It's up to you as acting head of that department to rename it accordingly.
I would make a motion that we adopt the vision and mission statement and the name Pacific View Arts Center.
I would second, unless, Joy, I think you've been involved longer on this, if you want to second it.
No, that's fine, Bruce.
And then before we vote, to clarify, so there is some money budgeted for furnishings, and so we're going to furnish. And the list of activities, there are some needs for equipment, but we're not going to provide charcoal and paper and acrylic paints and things like that and screen printing equipment at this time, or what is the plan there?
There is some screen printing equipment already in the Arts Division inventory. And for city staff-run programming, we would, such as a camp or to, again, follow the recreation model. For those classes, we would be providing the materials and equipment required.
Okay, so you'll come back with a budget and a list of things that you're going to acquire? Is that the plan?
Yes, and the thought was to be conservative and make sure we have what we need to ensure success, but again, conservative.
And yes, that is part of the discussion that we're going to have as part of the operations plan, is not only materials, but potential staffing needs as well.
Okay. And I would encourage developing, as part of that budget, the acquisition of some Apple computers that have Adobe Creative Suites on it, so that some of the activities that you're talking about, the digital photography, maybe the filmmaking, there would be opportunities for classes to be conducted with that equipment. And I know Adobe has some subscriptions that are for educational purposes that are fairly inexpensive. So I would encourage you to explore that a bit. I know that the room in the broadcast room is a studio that's going to be similar to the studio that we have here.
That is correct.
So
Be operated by the city.
So performing arts, it's going to be possible to broadcast that?
And also have offer an educational component, which is an internship program and teaching broadcasting.
Great. And the performing arts rooms, there is that collapsible wall.
Yes.
Does that just add the two capacities together, or does that expand the capacities because of the number of doors that are now available?
It expands it by one, so when that door is pushed back, you actually get 37 instead of 36,
Oh, I
which would
see.
be the adding the two together.
Well, that's not what we had in mind, because it would have been fun to have a little stage in there and be able to put on a performance. I know my kids all did sixth grade plays at Pacific View, and there were more than 40 people there, so.
Yeah. Colette was hoping for the same. so.
Yes, so that's a bummer, but, yeah. So I don't see any more questions. We beat this to death. Thank you very much. Really appreciate all the comments and efforts of the arts community. Thank you. We will now vote on the question.
Motion carries unanimously with Hinsey absent.
We are now moving on to a council member initiated item, which is number 12A, to untable consideration of the all-way stop control at Acosta Avenue. You may recall that almost a year ago, we had conversation about an all-way stop control at Sheridan and La Costa Avenue. It was tabled for some exploration of some issues, and so the point of this is to untable it. I've been taught by the parliamentarian that we should never, ever table anything ever again. We should continue it to a date uncertain, I think is the terminology to be used, and then it can reappear at that uncertain time. So I don't see any requests to speak. Are there any, can anybody willing to move? Councilmember Ehlers?
Go ahead.
I would move to untable.
Okay.
I'll second that.
And that motion carries unanimously with Hinsey absent.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to city council member reports pursuant to AB 1234.
Nothing to report.
We had a board meeting today with, geez, I'm losing it.
Encina.
Thank you. It was first thing this morning. It's been a long day. I've spent the day with Joy today, so
Okay.
that's it.
Nothing to report.
I participated in a Zoom session to interview potential hirees for the interim executive director job at Sandag, and we will be having a special meeting to do final interviews in closed session, and that's it. City manager reports.
Yes, just want to make an announcement that some of you may already be aware of this, but the city is no longer able to collect household batteries. Unfortunately, our contractor no longer is able to pick them up or doesn't wish to pick them up. So there are a couple of locations. We're putting it up on social media and in the city newsletter, but it's not that we don't want to pick up the batteries, but we don't have anyone who will take them off of our hands. So if you happen to get a question about that, there are some locations where they can be dropped off.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah. Managing battery chemicals is important. City attorney reports.
And I use the one in Vista all the time. It's really handy. You just pull in, pop your trunk, they take it out. If you have them in like a plastic container, they'll even dump them out for you, give you the container back. In and out real quickly.
Appreciate you taking them to Vista.
I thought you were going to ask me to collect them and carry
Yeah, there you
everybody's
go.
up. Yeah.
City attorney reports.
I do support safe battery disposal, but I have no further report.
City clerk reports.
No report.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned. I appreciate everybody pushing through. We did this without a break. It wasn't easy.
The bell.